come a day when it will be closed down and merged with another larger facility, because that's what large organizations do in the name of efficiency. In the same vein, there's a so-called special dividend. This has been mentioned by others. This has the appearance of being a very shiny object indeed. In the document presented to City Council, it's framed as a gift. It's not a gift. In effect, Electra is presenting as a gift, they call it a bonus dividend, cash that has been accrued by Guelph Hydro, simply because Guelph Hydro has been well run. Here's what industry expert Jay Shepard has to say. It's not like the normal share of profits. It is a catch-up of prior year profits that have been left in the company and accumulated as equity. It's not coming from Electra. It is coming from Guelph Hydro's cash on hand, which at the end of 2016 was $22 million. So in effect, we are being offered as an inducement an asset we already own. I understand that Guelph Hydro and the city canvassed a number of utilities with a view to exploring their potential as partners in a merger. These discussions are necessarily secret. So I have no way of knowing why the other options weren't pursued. But it does seem clear to me that we are losing something that we set out to preserve in the form of control and jobs, and being offered as inducements, shiny objects which on closer inspection have considerably less substance than the literature that we've seen would lead us to believe. When we set out to find a potential partner for Guelph Hydro earlier this year, as I remember, we explicitly sought a partner geographically close to us and of comparable size. We did not set out to hook up with one of the biggest municipally owned utilities in North America. We're told we need to be bigger, and I'm reluctantly prepared to accept that. But it does seem to me that we're being bulldozed into a merger that may not, in fact, be our best option. I would like to see Council stop and take a really hard look, first to gauge whether the shiny objects being dandled before us are really worth it, and second, to see if there's not a more appropriately scaled option available. Thank you.
And thank you, sir. Is there any questions at this time? Seeing none. Brian, you are up from IBEW Local 636. Is John Petty here? Sorry, I should have my glasses on, everybody. Is John Petty here? Yes? Okay, sir, you're in the wings. And Brian, you have the floor.
Mayor and members of council, thank you for letting me be here. I haven't got a lot to say. Everything I wanted to say has been said by the previous speakers. I can reiterate some of this stuff, and I will. I do believe the $18.5 million is your money. It shouldn't be part of the merger. You could take that money anytime you wanted. And I think it's a put on just to make it look good. 2 weeks is not enough time to digest a 231-page report. I got a full-time job, and I do this for a living, right? And I couldn't get through that report and digest it properly. I don't know how you guys could, or members of this citizenry, of this community. I think this decision's being rushed. I don't know if it's based on the fact that we're looking at provincial elections next year, and that we know both the NDP and the Conservatives have different plans for the hydro industry. NDP is against mergers. Conservatives are going to change the playing field altogether. There just seems a rush to approve this. We need to move a little more slowly and take our time to do so. Along with the deputation order tonight, like I look at, somebody mentioned it earlier about the chair of the electric board starting it off, and Brian Benz is going to finish it, but ahead of Brian are 3 other pro speakers towards this merger. It seems like this has been put together to end on a positive note for the merger. Really, last I have to say on this whole thing is that I think that council should defer this decision for at least 3 months, if not till the next election, and let the community have more say in this, because I don't think it's a good deal for this community. Thank you.
And thank you, sir. Is there any questions for Brian at this time? Go ahead, Councillor Salisbury.
Mr. Mayor, through you, Brian, it says in the delegate list that you are with the Brotherhood.
Yes.
I'm wondering, are you here as a representative of the union, or are you just listing that as background?
That's where I come from. I represent the membership at Guelph Hydro.
Okay. The comments that you spoke sounded from the heart and personal.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. Do you have a position that you're bringing forward from the union?
As to what?
with regards to the merger discussion this evening?
We have no position on the merger. I think the merger could be a good thing, but I think this is being rushed through.
Okay.
I believe in what the other people said, that it was a like-sized utility, a like-minded utility, and this isn't either.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And thank you, sir. And John Petty, I did see you, and then I would imagine it's not a coincidence that Rosemary Petty is okay, coming with you? Yes. And will this be combined?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes? Okay, go ahead, sir.
Those around the council
Yep.
and in the hall that know us know that we're a team. So we would like to take our time and put it together and make a joint presentation. We've lived in Guelph for quite a number of years now, and we're speaking tonight because we feel it's important that the correct decision be made regarding Guelph's largest asset. And I'd like Rose to take over at this point.
After reading most of the city report, the summary prepared by the Council of Canadians, Guelph chapter, as well as an article in the Guelph Mercury Tribune with respect to the proposed Electra merger, we have come to the conclusion that this merger is yet another opportunity for short-term municipal gain, resulting in long-term customer pain. Nothing that we have read gives us any confidence that this merger is in the best interests of Guelph as a city or of our family as an electricity customer. The city must not fall into the trap of privatizing assets. It always ends up delivering fewer benefits than projections indicate, and generally at a higher cost for what it does deliver. The rapacious provisos in place with respect to the cost of attempting to dissolve this merger at some future point should be a clear warning that once the city falls into this honey trap, we are all firmly stuck. Electra has approximately 1 million customers, yet it seems they will only have 2 customer service call centers. Will that really be adequate to support the customer service needs of such a widespread service area? Guelph Hydro does not need to merge with Electra. Guelph Hydro is functioning very well as a standalone and appears to be well placed to continue to be a profitable and progressive enterprise for the foreseeable future. When the time comes to address or improve economies of scale, then a better alternative would be to approach Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro to explore the possibilities of forging a cooperative arrangement with them that would be to our mutual benefit and would not require a selling off of assets. Such a cooperative arrangement would allow Guelph Hydro to retain its independence and continue the growth and expansion of a viable and valuable asset that will continue to return respectable dividends to the city as it and Guelph Hydro move into the next phases of energy requirements. Electra has said that incremental dividends to Guelph will be approximately $10.1 million over the next 20 years. And yet, Guelph Hydro was able to return a dividend to the city of about $3 million last year. There's no difference between the projected standalone dividends and merger dividends. I think that was about $90.1 million over the same time period. Can't remember. We do understand that the dividends from a standalone operation may fluctuate year by year. However, that is also true of dividends from a merger. Since the merger is based on projections and assumptions, there is no reason not to project and assume that Guelph Hydro will continue to be able to return sizable dividends in future while meeting the energy needs of Guelph and Rockwood. Yes, the risk will belong to Guelph Hydro. However, so will the benefits. This proposed merger is clearly, to me, to us, a case of Electra finding yet another profitable municipal electrical distributor to absorb. Make no mistake. If Guelph Hydro was struggling to break even, Electra would not have the slightest interest in merging with Guelph Hydro. The steps taken to get to the point of city staff urging council to accept the merger are shrouded in secrecy. The people of Guelph were not given any information with which to evaluate whether this is a good deal or not. We are being told to swallow it whole. If this merger is really going to benefit Guelph, Why was the process so secretive? Why did it have to be hidden? The process. I'm not talking about financial details, I'm talking about the process. The very least, we should have been told who the other alternatives under consideration were. The fact that the experts were only asked to consider the offer from Electra gives a distinct and undeniable impression that there was only ever one player. Guelph City Council, we implore you, do not accept this proposal. It will not meet our needs now or in the future. It is not designed to benefit Guelph. It is designed to meet the needs of Electra and could very well leave Guelph in a seriously exposed situation at the end of the sit-out period. Electra is not our only option. It is neither the best way nor the only way. Evidence is being revealed every day that bigger is not always better with respect to energy delivery. Guelph Hydro has the ability to carry us into the future without resorting to an arrangement that offers no real advantages to the citizens of Guelph or Rockwood and could indeed prove to be a costly and short-sighted decision.
And so that's your time, or no?
That's my time.
That's half the time?
Okay? No,
Okay.
you know
Yeah,
what?
and
I'm easy going.
yeah.
No, I
And
thought that you were
honestly-
combining it into the 5 minutes. You're coming up together
Yeah.
because that makes sense, but you want to both have 5 minutes?
Yeah, and honestly, Mr. Mayor, we're almost done anyway.
Oh,
Okay?
perfect. But
Okay.
you know what? You go right ahead. Start the timer.
We
for-
feel that this is a very one-sided deal. It's an excellent deal for Electra, who are, in the business of doing what they do. But it's a terrible deal for Guelph and its citizens. There's an exceedingly low return for our $228 million worth of assets. If, down the line, Electra decides that they want to privatize, we have little or no say or ability to stop that privatization. And the recently signed CETA agreement mandates that should that happen, at some point, we would not be able to dissolve that merger. We would not be allowed to put Guelph Hydro back into the public realm. It must be sold to another private company. This would be on top of a 22% tax penalty. So we have very little say in the future management decisions if we go through with this merger. We only have one seat on the board that's dominated by bigger players than Guelph. And we only have 4.63% of ownership. Guelph has no controls that those shares won't be diluted further as well. As well, on top of that, we're expected to lose at least 30 good-paying jobs here in Guelph. Importantly, no information has been provided into what other options were considered and what the details of those options were. We feel that not enough consideration has been given to other options, a better fit for the civic and community culture of Guelph would be a cooperative merger with Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro. That would allow us to retain control of our assets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you very much. Now, Isaiah, you are here because I saw you. Yes. You are up next. And then is Todd Ernst here? Okay, sir, you're in the wings. And the floor is yours, Isaiah. Go ahead whenever
Awesome.
you're ready.
I'll just be a quick second. I'm just going to get this laptop.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Okay, I'm ready to go. Awesome. Thanks for your time. My name's Isaiah. I work at Guelph Hydro, and I'm a member of IBEW, and I'm representing myself today. And I would like to speak about the proposed merger with Guelph Hydro and Electro Utilities. In the report to City Council, there are several major claims that are major cause for concern. This is because the claims are posed in a way to deliberately mislead the reader. This is an attempt to sway the public to be pro-merger by purposely misinforming us. The items I'll speak on today are specifically regarding improved customer service and reliability that us Guelph residents are supposedly supposed to receive in this merger. In this report, several of the claimed enhancements to customer service are listed as nighttime technical call center for outages, nighttime social media support, as well as 24/7 access to customer self-serve. Where the report is dishonest is failing to mention that Guelph Hydro currently already staffs a 24/7 control room that responds to all customer outage calls. They actively send out tweets to notify all residents of outages, and there's already an outage map that's accessible on our website to all residents. Also on that same website, customers have access 24/7 to all their own customer information regarding usage, billing history, and other types of information. So in this regard, Guelph Hydro is actually a leader in customer outage reporting and interaction. But unfortunately, after reading this report, there's no way for the public to know this. The report also claims enhanced emergency support during storms as a benefit to this merger. Unfortunately, what's more likely to happen is the opposite. During a large storm, many of Electra's regions will be simultaneously affected. So when Electra is deciding where to divert resources, such as work crews, trucks, or equipment, restoring parts of Guelph may have to wait until other load-dense areas of Electra are up and running, such as Hamilton or Mississauga. When factoring Electra's customer base of approximately 1 million versus Guelph's 55,000, a much clearer picture is painted as to what we may be walking into. A perfect example of this type of storm is 2013 ice storm that hit most parts of Ontario. Regions of Vaughan and Brampton were without power for over 3 days. South of us, parts of the storm missed Hamilton and St. Catharines, fortunately, but unfortunate for their customers, some of them were still without power for several days. These same four systems now constitute the majority of Electra and who we're looking to merge with at this moment. In comparison, Guelph was restored within 24 hours. Furthermore, Gessie was able to provide our neighboring LDCs with work crews to help get their lights on and up and going. This was only made possible because of Guelph's continued investment in its innovative system and its dedicated staff. Building on this point, Electra claims that local crews will be responding to local outages. Well, although this is true, Electra has already stated that it intends to reduce staff through attrition and retirement. As a result, Guelph will require more contractors to conduct the same work. This will mean less local staff over time. With this being the previous model for existing previous mergers such as Toronto Hydro and PowerStream, it's hard to see how response times in Guelph will improve. The opposite is much more likely. This report also states infrastructure upgrades as a benefit to this merger. Part of the reason Guelph Hydro scores so well in reliability is due to its continued investment in its infrastructure and detailed maintenance program. Guelph's maintenance standards simply surpass that of Electra. For example, Guelph will change a pole that's over 30 years old just sheerly out of preventative maintenance. Parts of Electra will rate that exact same hydro pole as good for over 50 years. And that's just one example of many. There's no assurance that in a merger, the same resources will be spent on our system here in Guelph. Guelph's system is relatively new in comparison to Electra, so the concern that resources, capital jobs, and system upgrades will be diverted to improve older parts of Electra, such as St. Catharines and Brampton. The Ontario Energy Board publishes scorecards for utilities to rate their performances across several categories. When comparing 2016 scorecards for reliability and customer service, it indicates clearly that Guelph Hydro provides better service for its customers than Electra. The evidence is clear. Guelph Hydro has better response times during outages. In addition, our call center performs significantly better. Electra is not a poorly run company, but there's absolutely no credible information to suggest that the merger will provide better service for Guelph Hydro customers. To sell these claims to the public as possible merger benefits is misleading and irresponsible. I'm almost done. For over 100 years, Guelph Hydro has been run as a safe and reliable and efficient utility. We've grown to become industry leader in building robust smart grid systems while facilitating green energy initiatives and jobs. And as shareholders, Guelph residents deserve clear, unbiased, and unfiltered information regarding the proposed merger between Electra and Guelph Hydro. How else are we supposed to make an informed and educated decision? At this time, let's vote no to merge with Electra. If at the very least, let's wait until the details are released and we can make the responsible and educated decision that the city of Guelph deserves.
Okay, thank you very much, Isaiah. Is there any questions? Seeing none, and thank you for your presentation.
Thanks.
And Todd Ernst is here, and is there a Rosanna Broderick here? Is Rosanna here? Oh, I imagine. Okay, so you're in the wings. And Todd, you are up. You have the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the Greater Toronto Airport Authority's experience as a customer of Electra. Electra may be new as a name, but the partnership between their team and the Greater Toronto Airports Authority goes back many years now. Prior to the merger, we were EnerSource's single largest customer. Just a few quick facts and figures to put that into context. The peak demand of the airport is about 40 megawatts. Last year in 2016, we had 44 million passengers pass through the airport. Toronto Pearson employs just over about 40,000 people. And in addition to the many other facilities that support the operation and the business supporting the airport, we have our own fire department with 3 fire halls, our own police department, which we contract out to the region of Peel, and we even have our own utilities. So in effect, we're like a small city ourselves. And although we own our own high voltage distribution network, we actually contract Electra, previously EnerSource, to maintain that system for us. And that additional service that they've provided for us, they have performed brilliantly. I have to say, currently, we're in the midst of an upgrade to the protective relay system at the airport, and it's a technically and logistically challenging project. Electra's come forward, bringing 3 of their teams together to work with us in performing this upgrade in a way that's been seamless to the airport operations, and we couldn't have done it without them. Based on that and some other examples I'm going to provide, post-merger, we may no longer be Electra's largest customer, but we feel no less important. We see this in the extra things that they're doing to support us, and they're providing us with considerably more than just wires and electrons. One of the significant services that Electra provides us as well is through their conservation demand management programs. So the energy efficiency programs that they've been providing have helped Toronto Pearson not just reduce our electric bills, but we've been able to achieve and actually exceed our GHG greenhouse gas reduction goals of 20% by 2020 ahead of time. As a consequence of this, we've also become one of just a handful of airports in North America that are level 3 airport carbon accreditation certified. Electra didn't stop there. They've gone above and beyond in introducing us to the Ontario Centres of Excellence, an organization that we're hoping to be able to work with to access the cap and trade funding to further reduce our greenhouse gas footprint. With our projected growth, Electra has also provided us additional support. We wanted to flag the fact to them that, as I mentioned, our 2016 passenger volume was about 44 million. By 2020, we're expecting about 60 million passengers, passing through the airport, all the way up to potentially 80 million by 2035. With this growth comes increased energy demand, and we just decided to flag early to Electra that this is coming down the pipe and may be an issue at some point. Although it wasn't a high priority issue, they wasted no time in hosting a meeting with us to discuss our plans for the future, not just how they can provide us more electrons, but what are the options? We talked about things like rooftop solar and other innovative ideas for providing energy to the airport. Other ways that Electra has helped to connect the airport include facilitating a meeting with us with Hydro One to talk about some of the system upgrades that were happening in our area and how they could potentially impact the airport. And we were able to coordinate with them to make sure that there were no impacts to the energy quality and supply to the airport. These have all been typical of my experiences post-merger. Whenever I had a question or concern, just wrapping up quickly, Electra's always been there. They've been very responsive. They've been a trusted partner to Toronto Pearson in our growth and provision of reliable electricity. And the only change I really see post-merger is the name of the organization. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, sir. Councillor Salisbury has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, compelling presentation. I appreciate it. I took a moment to see if you're from Guelph. Are you a Guelph resident, Mr. Ernst?
No, I'm not. I'm an Oakville resident.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and we don't discriminate here. But I'm curious as to why you're delegating in the city of Guelph on this issue.
Frankly, I was asked by Electra if I'd be willing to talk about my customer experience.
That's fair.
And I said yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure.
You're not done yet.
Questions? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, even though you're from Oakville, you're not done yet. Councillor Alt has a follow-up question.
Thank you, Mayor Guthrie. And Oakville's a nice place, too. Thank you very much, Mr. Ernst. Your testimony on behalf of Electra is certainly appreciated and is certainly commendable. And certainly your credentials at the the Greater Toronto Airport Authority is as well. As you can appreciate, my concern is Guelph, and that's where the rub comes in for me in some senses. I'm not familiar with what the designation of the GTAA is, whether it is defined as an essential service or not, but whether it is or not, my concern is that I must presume that it has priority in terms of any power outage or any downing of any energy sources at all within southwestern Ontario, southern Ontario, more than anyone else. My question is actually, it dovetails with the last speaker, Mr. Bernani, I believe his name was Isaiah, and that is his statement that we potentially risk Guelph's emergency services when something like an ice storm affects us and could affect GTAA.
Absolutely.
That those services could be prioritized to go to the GTAA, leaving our own residents somewhat deficient in those. I was wondering if you could comment. Is the GTAA a priority for the restoration of power, because you've got 60 million customers in the future having to come in and get out of that area?
Well, yes, obviously it's a priority to keep the airport running, but I don't see that diverting resources from other customers, primarily because we have a 117 megawatt cogen plant on site, and if there's a system outage, we actually have enough capacity not just to self-supply the airport, but also to contribute back to the grid and help Electra to supply customers.
Great, thank you very much, sir. Let's see here. Rosanna, you are here, yes. Janice Folk Dawson, you are also here, so please be ready. You're in the wings. John Rangers is not here tonight, so sorry, ma'am, you go right ahead. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor Guthrie and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective as a former Brampton Hydro employee, which joined Electra earlier this year. My name is Rosanna Broderick, and I am the Director of Change Management and Communications at Electra. This key role was explicitly created to ensure our employees have the support needed to succeed within the significant change environment which occurs when companies come together. Prior to this, I was the HR Director at Brampton Hydro. In the months leading up to joining Electra, naturally, there was a degree of nervousness among our employees. Despite Electra's ongoing assurances that all employees would be treated fairly in the new company, We Brampton employees were concerned that we would get the short end of the stick. We all thought we would be out of jobs and our lives would be crushed. We were well aware that we weren't one of the 3 companies that were merging. Our company was being purchased, and we were worried that nobody truly cared about us, or should I say me, as change is personal, very personal. But quite the opposite happened. True to the word of our leaders like Norm Loberg and Brian Bentz, and others who are here tonight, employees from all legacy utilities, no matter where they came from or what level they were at, were treated fairly in all aspects, including access to jobs and resources. As it turned out, what could have been a demoralizing experience was one that was filled with opportunity within a progressive, respectful work environment. I am only one example. Many of my friends and co-workers from Brampton have robust careers at Electra, and we consider ourselves much better off than we were before the merger. Throughout the process, we were treated with respect and inclusion. Our legacy culture was honored and respected. Our customers and communities remained priority number 1. In my new role as Director of Change Management and Communications, I have learned a lot about change. I learned that most of us fear change and assume the worst, especially when it is about our personal futures. Some people ask questions to gain insight. Others assume the worst and use scare tactics to resist change. Some go silent and wait to hear what will happen next. In my case, I asked questions and I took that leap of faith. I am so happy I did. My observation has been that Electra is working hard to bring together the best of our legacy utility practices, cultures, and people to form a very good company. This is a complex journey that continues even now. We are proceeding carefully and taking the time to get it right. Our leadership solicits employee feedback on a regular basis to see if we are on the right track. Electra's service territory includes a number of diverse communities, and we remain very much focused on maintaining those community roots with a strong emphasis on customers. This is important to me. Our employees are community-focused, helping at food banks, community initiatives like Habitat for Humanity, tree planting, and other activities. Our collaborations with local business associations remain strong. Opportunities to support our cities and towns have increased, given our broader access to resources. We still have a long way to go. We are continually learning. In closing, I say this: the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. What I have seen over the last year is that overall, my Brampton friends and co-workers are happier today than they were in the past. I have experienced a leadership that cares about their employees and the communities we operate in. I feel that I am part of a company that allows me to make a difference and be part of the future and something that matters. I truly feel that I am part of the Electra family, and I hope you join us. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Rosanna. Councillor Salisbury also has a question. And
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor
Rosanna, your experience post-merger with Electra is absolutely relevant and very helpful for the discussion tonight. Having said that, it's important to me to know who is from the community and who has been invited to delegate before us. Can I ask you whether or not you've been invited to delegate or if you're from the community?
I am here representing my personal experience. Having said that, as an employee of Electra and having gone through the experience of being acquired, I wanted to take this opportunity, recognizing the amount of angst that might very well exist amongst Guelph Hydro employees. And having been through that experience, I want to provide some sort of reassurance that through my personal experience, it is completely natural and normal to fear and not know what the future holds. But I can honestly say that the confidence that I've experienced as my coworkers and my friends at Brampton Hydro have, particularly in our leadership team at Electra, we care and we will help employees through the process.
And again, I really appreciate that, and I think it's very relevant.
Yeah.
So I'm not disparaging that at all. I just kind of want to make sure I know, who I'm talking with, and I mean absolutely no disrespect by this question, but as an employee of Electra, are you currently being paid to be here?
No, absolutely
Thank you very
not.
much. I had to ask.
That's
Thank you.
okay.
We don't validate parking either, so. So don't ask. Councillor Alt.
I don't know how to follow that, but just to let you know that the bylaw officers aren't working right now, so don't worry about it.
So we're good.
Thank you. I appreciate the statements that you made, Ms. Broderick, about the legacy being respected and the praise that you provided for that. But mine is more of a technical question. If I got it right, you're working in human resources now, or did?
No, I did when I was part of Brampton Hydro.
Okay.
I'm currently the Director of Change Management and Communications.
Excellent. Actually, either way, one of my significant concerns is a question of disruption, and that's union succession issues. And as a consequence of you having worked at Brampton Hydro, you would probably be familiar with this. I was wondering if you could just outline some of that and what the impact might be for employees of Guelph Hydro experiencing that particular succession issue and future succession rates.
While I appreciate that question, I think that's better deferred to our CEO, Brian Bentz.
Fine. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Janice Folk Dawson. Is Eric Veneman here? Great. So, Eric, you're in the wings. And Janice, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor Guthrie, City Councillors, community members, and staff. My name is Janice Folk Dawson, and I'm privileged to be the President of the Guelph and District Labour Council, representing over 7,000 workers who work, live, and care about the sustainability, governance, and access to good public services in the Guelph area. I begin tonight by acknowledging the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations, on whose traditional territory we are meeting. Workers hope that obtaining Indigenous input and guidance on the important decision before Council has been a priority. And Labour believes that we should be working from the Indigenous perspective, that this decision, along with all the decisions you make, affect the next 7 generations. Unions bargain workers' collective agreements, so we understand the privilege and responsibility of negotiating and determining people's livelihoods. We respect the huge responsibility that lies before you as council to make an informed decision for the governance of the local hydro system and what the impact and consequences that this decision will have on individuals, businesses, institutions, and our community. I am suspicious when at the bargaining table an employer says, "What will it take to sell the deal?" And that's what this feels like. We are being sold a deal that we don't have all the answers for. Unions democratically ratify an agreement that meets the needs of our members. Our expectation is that you should be negotiating and ratifying a fair and equitable agreement that meets the needs of all of the Guelph community. We at Labour Council have done a great deal of research on this issue and can appreciate the amount of information, charts, and people's opinions you have experienced on this issue. Our request and advice before you make any decision is to ask yourself the following questions. Why now? What makes this the time to merge? The system is still a contributing revenue source, making efficiencies with high customer satisfaction and 120 good jobs. Perhaps it's because you believe we have their attention and so could enhance the agreement with no job loss, maintaining local ownership, and a Guelph veto on future decisions. If you can truly answer yes, it is time, then workers should be given a definite answer that there shall be no job loss or burden by way of unpaid increased travel time or any downscaling in wages and/or benefits. You have a role and a responsibility in maintaining good jobs that can sustain families. Workers deserve to be protected and to know exactly what is going to happen. If workers lose their jobs because Council made this agreement, it is essentially Council firing these workers. If workers are going to lose their jobs, that is information you need to know up front and that you need to be able to communicate to those workers. The city has stated that it will receive a 4.63% ownership interest in Electra, as well as a permanent seat on Electra's board of directors. Could council explain what Electra's unanimous shareholder agreement means for future decisions of Electra when it comes to investing in the Guelph area? Does it mean that the Guelph Council's representative gets a veto over certain decisions of Electra's investments? What and who is the Guelph Director's primary responsibility to? Just Guelph Council or to all of Electra's shareholders? How does the Council ensure that the investment in Guelph is still controlled by Guelph? Does this limit the ability of Guelph to invest in its own public electricity infrastructure, say local grid upgrades, local generation, or local energy saving programs? What is the process the Council has installed to make sure that the decisions of the Guelph Council when it comes to who owns our electricity system will not be overruled by all other directors on the board of Electra? Do all cities have to agree unanimously to sell or change ownership structures in Electra? Are there any decisions, say for change in ownership structure of Electra or sale of assets or shares to non-municipal companies or persons that a single vote by Guelph Council could stop or delay? What is the economic impact of the loss of 60 quality local jobs? How is it going to be the offset with investments by Electra other than the promised 10 jobs attached to the Green Energy and Technology Centre? Have those jobs been outlined, and are they of similar quality in terms of pay and benefits in lost jobs? Is there a plan to invest in local energy generation with any public-public partnership with OPG to bring back those 60 lost jobs to the Guelph area? Through the negotiations with Electra, will Guelph City Council consult the people of Guelph on what they want from their utility? There is a lot of talk about dividend to the municipality from Electra. However, any revenue to Guelph from Electra is from the public through their electricity bills. This is not exactly the most progressive way for Guelph Council to increase or sustain revenue. Is the council looking at ways to make this revenue stream more progressive by providing breaks to low-income and families in need through local investments in public sector? One more sentence.
Okay, great.
Council and the Guelph community deserve answers to all these questions before we move forward with this merger. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Any questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you very much. Eric Veneman, I hope I'm saying your last name right. Yep. Is a Krista Perry in the room? Great, you're in the wings, okay? Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the time to talk, and I'll try to keep it short because it is past my bedtime now. My name's Eric Veneman. I'm a Guelph resident and an employee of Guelph Hydro. I represent myself tonight with my comments and my opinion. I can say that in my current capacity of VP of Innovation and Growth at Guelph Hydro, I've been given the opportunity to learn firsthand about what the future has in store for our industry, and it's all about technology and renewables and a lot of the stuff you've heard tonight. It's definitely exciting. It's an exciting future for the industry. I think it's an exciting future for anyone that uses electricity. There's no question that there's a lot of excitement around tonight's decision and what to do with Guelph Hydro, so I offer 3 points for you to consider in your final deliberations. Number one, do small electric distribution utilities need to grow to remain competitive in the Ontario market over the next 10 years? Absolutely. We do need to grow. We do need to achieve some economies of scale in a lot of the systems that we use and in a lot of the things that we do. It's inevitable, just as growth is in this awesome community. Is a merger the best way to grow? For sure, yes. It's the only way to grow quickly and have some say in how it's done. The proposed technology center gives us a shot at true alignment between energy leaders in Guelph and utility investments in green technology. This excites me as well, but I won't use another food reference because I actually had a food reference at the beginning that I'm not going to give you because it's a little late for that. I don't envy you. You have to make a tough decision tonight. I understand you have a lot more information that's been made to the public, and that's good. My wish to you is that you do take the time inform yourselves and get all the answers you need to any questions you might have about this deal. And with the goal of making the best decision you can for the community and for the municipality. I feel very strongly, my final point here, that the future for our industry is very bright and full of opportunities that are exciting and that would apply to all electric utilities. So thank you.
And thank you very much. Any questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you very much. Krista Perry is here, yes. And then is John Camilleri here? Okay, you're next, okay. So Krista, the floor is yours.
Mayor Guthrie, councillors, thank you for your time this evening. I am the current and hopefully future billing supervisor at Guelph Hydro. I've worked in the electricity industry for 20 years. I have diverse knowledge ranging from regulatory rate filing, accounting, customer service, credit and collection, and now billing. I have been a contributor on many Ontario Energy Board working groups, that have helped shape the industry, and I am well respected and knowledgeable in my field. But I am not speaking on behalf of Guelph Hydro this evening. I am speaking as a 40-year resident of this wonderful city and a homeowner. Everything I speak of here is recorded in public documentation and has not been gleaned during my tenure at Guelph Hydro. I would like to make this point clear. I am not against a merger. I believe the industry is moving toward a final number of approximately 10 utilities. It has been said by many industry experts that the ideal size of a utility is approximately 500,000 customers. Hydro One and Electra have the lion's share of the electrical connections, and I believe they are too big and are getting bigger. In my opinion, too big creates customer dissatisfaction and lost accountability by the utility. I'm not sure if anyone remembers the Hydro One billing nightmare. What about a merger with Waterloo North, Cambridge, Kitchener-Wilmot, Milton, just to name a few? They're not ready yet, but they will be. I ask you, what's the rush? There are like-minded cultures, geographical proximity, and Guelph has worked or is still working together with these utilities on shared projects as we share a similar vision. Guelph Hydro is and always has been a well-run utility that provides high dividends to the city, and the value is not decreasing. The rate increases have been low, and service charges have not increased in over 20 years. So let's talk a little bit about money. The $18.5 million is not a dividend from Electra. This is Guelph Hydro's money that Electra doesn't want. Electra's last rate application requested an increase of 2.84%. Guelph's requested increase, 0.23%. Electra's executives decide the vision. Guelph's board of directors decides Guelph's vision. Will Guelph have an executive in place at Electra? Is this request in the agreement? I don't know. I hope you do. I recently read an article by a well-respected mergers and acquisitions lawyer who has been an intervener in utility rate applications for many years. He makes his living by dissecting the facts. By his account, Electra would have paid the city $2.2 million compared to Guelph's $3 million in the last year. Now, I'd like to make it clear that I'm speaking about the delivery portion of the bill, which is in Guelph, 21% of the bill. 79% is a pass-through of provincial charges that no matter who you merge with, you will be paying. Under an electric merger, this is what I believe you can expect to see on your bills. Large commercial customers will be hit the hardest. Expect an increase of approximately 30%. Small commercial customers will be the second hardest hit. They can expect an approximate 25% increase. Residential customers can expect a slight decrease of about $3 per month, but they will be hit by with most of the increased service charges. Don't move, pay a bill late, request an income tax statement, or question the accuracy of your bill. Your savings will be lost. Electric service charges are triple what Guelph's are. Guelph doesn't charge customers for income tax statements, credit references, or for requesting a reread of their meter, or a myriad of other services. Electra charges customer $30 if they request a reread of their electric meter and the read is correct. So think of this. The customer has one provider of electricity and there is a financial consequence for questioning their bill. Let's talk about the business. The Ontario Energy Board is working toward implementing a fixed rate design. The purpose of this rate design is to protect the utility from being vulnerable to customer dips and spikes in electricity consumption. The promotion of conservation affects the profits of the utility until this rate model is put into effect. So they're moving towards this quickly. So the more electricity you use, the less you use, it won't matter. The shareholders' dividends will be the same. I'm almost done.
Okay.
Utilities are currently protected with an OEB approved rate from large corporations using their own power to get off the grid. The utility is kept whole by charging the customer a standby charge. The Ontario electricity rate structure is complicated. Please take the time you need to fully understand the information that has been presented to you by the SOC, by the delegates, which by my count now are 4 to 25 against, but 3 were not from this community, 3 of that 4.
Okay, is that your final statement?
In conclusion, I hope that I have shone some light on some pressing concerns and inconsistencies that have been circulating. I have shared my in-depth understanding of the electricity sector. We are not vulnerable to industry cannibalism and can operate as is until more suitable partners are ready. This vote is irreversible. If there is even one piece of information that you have heard tonight that gives you pause or that you would like to investigate, please postpone the vote until you are completely comfortable that your vote is fully informed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm getting a little bit lenient here, folks, and so got to make sure we wrap it up after the 5 minutes to be consistent, okay? Any questions for Krista at this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I look forward to asking some questions in regards to your comments. Okay. John is up from the Power Workers Union, and then is Barry Ward here? Yes, you are in the wings. John, go right ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Guthrie and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Power Workers Union. My name is John Camilleri and I'm a staff officer at the PWU. I'm here tonight to talk about the relationship specifically with the Power Worker Union and Electra, and to ensure that the employees of Guelph Hydro will be treated fairly and respectfully during the proposed merger. We as the Power Workers Union have had a very good relationship with Electra. I know it's been short, but we've had a long-standing relationship with the former Power Stream and with Brian Benz personally and with senior management as well. The relationship has been built over several years. It's a mutual respect and trust of one another, and it's grown over time. It becomes evident when dealing with big or small issues. There's goodwill with best intentions from both of us. We have our differences, like most management and union companies, and from time to time we've been able to, come together. Actually, not time to time. Most times we've been able to work together to resolve them, to make sure that the best interest of the company and the employee was met. This is a difficult decision that you're going to make, and it's going to affect the members at the workers at Guelph Hydro. I understand that. I went through and I'm not from the community, so you don't have to ask that question now. I'm from Toronto. I was the president of QP Local 1, which represented Toronto Hydro workers. And the industry's changing. I worked with Punkage at Toronto. I worked with a lot of different people. And we saw the industry, 30 years ago, there were 304 different utilities, right? They're down to 62. Someone said that there's going to be probably 8, maybe 10, right? And as a president of a local, I decided I needed to be with a union or with an organization that represented its workers. And I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know what representation is going to happen. And I'm not going to, but I'm just saying that the relationship that the power workers have been able to build with Electra, right, as a company. And I take it's because of the leadership in the company. I take it because of the CEO of the former PowerStream and now of Electra has been able to build that relationship with the union. And the angst I know that the members are going through is extremely difficult. I had one of my former members get up and speak here tonight, who's a member who works for Guelph Hydro. I know it's difficult. I know it's going to be difficult on you to make that decision, right? But as a company, Electra is progressive. Electra looks out for its workers. And that's the main thing that we as a union had looked at. So I know that, like I said, the industry's changing, and Electra's at the forefront of that. It's the second biggest utility in North America, and it's got great leadership. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. I have one question already, Councillor Gibson.
Actually, thank you through Mr. Mayor. I had your delegation earmarked on my page since earlier this evening, just because I wanted to ask you a question, but you've largely answered it. Was that you've represented PW workers through transition, through the merger through the merger process of Electra. In your estimation, they've been treated fairly?
Yeah. So presently, we're in the process of bargaining a new collective agreement with we're merging 5 collective agreements into one. Absolutely. Yeah, listen, I went through this, I don't know, 18 years ago with the amalgamation of Toronto. And it's a long process, right? And it'll take a while to get there, but there's a working relationship and understanding this is what we need to do between the union and the company. And yeah, no member's been left behind. And, all issues are being addressed. And it's a difficult, we've got, decades and decades of history in each collective agreement where we're trying to merge into one. And there's a good, we've got 10 members on the union side, and we've got 10 members on the employer side. And we're going through that. We start again Monday in Toronto, right? So.
Thank you, Mr. Camilleri.
You're welcome.
Councillor Alt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Camilleri. Just the issue of succession concerns me because of the potential for employees to be lost. And I appreciate you said no one is left behind, but I do believe that the people that have come from Guelph Hydro who have spoken tonight are concerned that 30 people are being left behind. I was wondering if you could just comment on that, please.
That was news to me too. I can't. I'm not. I've been I came here to discuss the relationship. So,
okay.
That's not fair to me, and I think it would be easier if one of the executives from the company talked about that.
And thank you for coming, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
No further questions. Barry Ward, Councillor, City of Barrie. We know where you're from then.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening, Mayor Guthrie, councillors, staff, and members of the public. My name is Barry Ward. I'm in my 18th year as a councillor in the City of Barrie, and yes, I do live in Barrie. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your electrical utility company. That is a decision for Guelph alone to make. I am here to tell you about my own experiences, and I was approached by the Electra Board to make a deputation to Guelph councillors because they have heard my comments over the years, and they thought I brought a unique perspective to the issue facing you tonight. I want to make clear, I prepared these comments I'm about to give. I'm on my own. They were not written or approved by anyone associated with Electra. They are entirely my own. Nobody from Electra has even seen them or heard them or suggested what I write. So they asked me to come without telling me what to write. In fact, they're probably sitting there a little nervous right now because I don't know what I'm going to say. I've spent some time in the last few days reading on the internet about the choice you are facing in the debate in social media and listening to the passionate comments tonight. It all looks incredibly familiar. We dealt with exactly the same issue in Barrie. It was in my third term that we as Barrie City Council were presented with the option of merging Barrie Hydro with Powerstream, which of course recently went through further mergers, became Electra. I was very opposed to the merger and quite vocal about it. Many of the arguments came up tonight, both in the community, City Hall, everywhere. There were several reasons, and all you're familiar with, but everything I was hearing tonight were a lot of the same arguments I used at the time. First, I hated the thought of giving up some control of our utility, which we certainly were being asked to do since we would be a minority shareholder in Powerstream. We had an extremely well-run utility in Barrie Hydro. It was always among Ontario's electrical distribution companies that ranked near the top in efficiency and profitability and near the bottom in cost to consumers. And I was bothered by the fact that we were going to lose some jobs, as with the Guelph Hydro proposal. I believe our jobs were also eliminated through attrition and some commuting 40 minutes down the road to Powerstream's head office. So I spoke against the Powerstream Barrie Hydro merger, as I said, in public, committee, at council. I'd probably have to say the majority of the residents who took the time to comment were against the merger, similar to here, and it was all to no avail. The majority of councillors voted in favour of the merger. That happened in 2009. So how has it gone? I can honestly say it has worked out okay for Barrie. In fact, it's worked out fine for Barrie. If customer service has suffered, I haven't heard about it from a single person. And as I'm sure you know as municipal politicians, if there's anything wrong with customer service, we hear about it. That was even true during the ice storm we had in March 2016, when some 20,000 Barrie households lost their power. I didn't get a single complaint about anything. I mean, people realize it's going to take a while to get the service back. I don't know the figure on how long it took to get power back to those people, but nobody complained. And I suspect being part of a larger company meant we could quickly marshal our forces to deal with something like this. We still have a local office, a place to pay bills or talk to customer service for those who still like face-to-face interaction. I've had dealings with them as the owner of a multi-rental property where frequent billing changes take place, and I've always found them easy to deal with. No change there. Our dividends have arrived as promised, maybe even better than promised, and I made a point of the first few years of tracking what those dividends were versus what the promise was, and they did meet them. Our distribution bills have been lower than the Ontario average, once again as promised. Powerstream continue to be part of the community, making generous contributions to such things as the local United Way. It's still early, but I don't anticipate any changes with Electra. When the proposal came up a year ago to merge Powerstream with two other utilities to create the entity now known as Electra, I made a point of saying publicly that my earlier fears had been allayed. I may have been the same, I'm not going to go back and say I would have changed my mind, but at least the fears that I had at the time were allayed. And based on that experience, I fully supported the most recent merger. One final thing, we had an election a year after the original merger of Barrie Hydro and Powerstream, much as you're facing. I make it a point of knocking on all 4,000 plus doors in my ward, at least once and most of them twice. Not one person mentioned the merger, not one, a year after it took place. In fact, once the merger happened, it seemed everyone accepted it and moved on. I opposed the merger strongly and was re-elected. The representative of Ward 3 beside me supported the merger and was defeated. The mayor at the time was a very vocal opponent of the merger, and he lost the subsequent election badly, in fact, 3% of the vote. And Jeff Lehman, who's speaking next, was a councillor at the time and a strong supporter of the merger. He ran for mayor and won. In other words, if there was any political lesson to be learned from the merger, I don't know what it was, except maybe that it wasn't a game changer for anyone when it came time to vote. As I said, I'm not here to tell you what to do. That's your decision. I will note that there is a big difference between selling your utility and merging with utilities also owned by municipalities. Not much different than Guelph. Even back in the day when I fought it, I made a point of saying I'm glad it's a merger. We're not selling our utility. Think of it as working alongside cities with similar needs and similar aspirations. Certainly Powerstream and now Electra has been very respectful for us, appearing regularly before councillors, keeping us up to date, providing us with information, answering all our questions. I think the fact that they asked me to speak tonight and not once asked me what I was going to speak about or suggest what I speak, that indicates a culture of trust maybe in local councillors. Not once did they ask me. I'm not getting paid any mileage for being here either. It was they left it up to me to say what I wanted to say to you. So I will have to say, if you're going to merge your utility with another, I'm confident you've picked a good choice in Electra. And thank you for your time. It's the second time I've been in Guelph in a year, and the last time it was 20 below as well.
Well, thank you, sir. And thank you, Barrie. Is there any questions for the councillor at this time? Seeing none.
Okay.
Seeing none. Thank you very much. Mayor Lehman from the city of Barrie. Good to see you, sir.
Nice to see you, Mayor Guthrie, and thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, members of council, for allowing me some time to bring a bit more of the Barrie experience to you tonight, and hopefully address a few of the issues that have been raised. And you've just heard from Barrie Ward. I was in the awkward position 8 years ago of arguing with Barrie Ward because I was a proponent of the merger. But I have such a sense of deja vu because I was in your seat. I was a councillor at the time, and the issues were very similar, and they are very difficult issues to struggle with. But the message I want to bring you is, over the past 8 years, the choice that we made to give up majority control, accept a minority share, merge our power utility not once but twice, has proven to produce nothing but benefits for our residents. Bigger has been better for us. That's been our experience. Mergers work. And to be very, very clear, this is not a private company. PowerStream is not a private company, and Electra is not a private company. We own it. 6 cities. 6 like-minded municipalities, and we hope that Guelph becomes the 7th. We're community-owned. It's owned by the people of the cities that we represent. The impact for Barrie over the financial impact over the course of the last 8 years has been to double our dividend. And at a time when power prices became the top of mind issue in Ontario, that 25% of the bill, that portion of the bill that we control, has remained virtually level. And we've been able to say to our residents that the action that we took, the actions that we have taken as Barrie City Council to merge first into PowerStream and then into Electra, have helped to keep power prices lower for our residents. Our ops center remains open. 8 years later, it's there, it's functioning, and it's assisting our residents. And I can tell you that that ice storm is something that I really do want to address. In 2016, I was at a friend's apartment, and the rain started freezing on the window of their apartment. Kids were playing, and it was slippery as heck going home, and I watched the power start to go out. And over the course of the next 12 hours, it was Easter weekend. It was a terrible time. It's always Good Friday. And the power went out, and I watched PowerStream roll their equipment into our community and start to restore power. And I remember the next day driving down a street where all the lights were off and there were trees down, branches down in the street, and there were guys up in the bucket truck doing such a difficult job. Linesmen do such a difficult and dangerous job. They're out there in freezing rain, restoring power to my residents. And I asked the guys on the truck, where are they from? Markham, Attiscott. That scale, the scale that PowerStream afforded us through the merger, allowed us to bring those extra resources as a company into Barrie. Our power was restored for most on Easter Saturday, for a few on Easter Sunday. In the municipality immediately adjacent to us, some people were out for a week. They were a smaller utility and they just didn't have the capacity. And the fact is, with climate change, these incidents are happening more. So that ice storm in 2016 is a really good example of the kind of impact that PowerStream and the merger, the scale created by the merger, has had in our community. The second thing I want to mention to you is IBM. IBM recently built a $90 million data center in our community, which included dozens of high-paying jobs. And I had the opportunity to ask the CEO of IBM Canada why they chose Barrie. They looked at 17 different communities in Southern Ontario. Power and the expertise of the PowerStream team in working with them on their power needs was absolutely essential to Barrie landing that facility. I am firmly of the belief that my community, my major industries, my major employers have benefited from the scale that PowerStream has created. It has helped us bring valuable jobs to our community. It's helped us to attract new industry and new employers. Ultimately, though, I believe this decision for us 8 years ago, and again with Electra a few years ago, ultimately goes back to our residents. I represent 145,000 people in a city that we like to compare ourselves to Guelph, even if we don't always measure up. But I can tell you that the benefits of these two mergers for our communities are tangible. It's helped us attract business. It's helped us keep bills down. The dividends have increased, and we have been able to spend those funds on needed projects in our communities. And the fact is, as you have heard many times from your staff, the world is changing. And we were concerned about the future, and as Barrie Council twice, we said that by merging our company, accepting a smaller ownership share, but achieving all those benefits of scale, we can meet the challenges of the future, maximize the value, of course, of something so valuable, and ultimately benefit our own residents and our community. So my simple message to you is the mergers have worked for us. Thanks for letting me come tonight.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the mayor? Councillor Hoffman?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Guthrie, to Mr. Lehman. You've done a good job of talking about the economic benefits to Barrie with the merger. Could you speak a little bit, can we draw on your experience as a board member and speak to the culture of Electra?
Of course. That was absolutely essential. When our leadership from Guelph Hydro, I'm going back to 2009 now, came to us and said, we think we need to do this. And there were those very real control concerns and are we going to be a tiny part in a much bigger company? Are we going to see this company become too corporate, too remote from customers, not responsive? It's just the opposite. We had more resources as PowerStream together to respond to the needs of our customers. So the culture of being customer service oriented grew. It got better. And I think, as Councillor Ward mentioned, we've maintained the counter in Barrie so that people can come in and talk to our employees. But all of the other things that we've been able to do for our customers that are so essential to the culture of a customer-oriented utility, they grew. They grew as we became PowerStream and we were able to do more things for people. And that's why we did Electra. That's why we founded Electra from EnerSource and Horizon and PowerStream together, because we believe we'll be able to do more for our customers together. The culture around the board table, you've heard that term like-minded tonight. Yes. I can only say it is an absolute delight working with a group of people who are so focused on delivering benefits for their residents by addressing the challenges of the future. This is a company that is aimed directly at the changes that are occurring in the industry. And the simple reality is you have to have scale to be able to make that shift to distributed energy. The only way we're going to, our mission statement is to maximize the benefits of energy for our people and our communities. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is with the scale that the larger company affords. But we are so committed to not becoming that corporate leviathan that forgets why it's there. We're owned by the people of 6 municipalities, and that's who we serve. And it's reflected in the culture in the boardroom. Yeah.
Councillor Gibson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your comments on your work center. 8 years into the merger, you still have an operations center in your community. That's important for us to know. Was that part of the discussion in the merger at the beginning? Were you able to secure that as a commitment, or is that something that you walked into without a formal written commitment and still exists today?
Yeah, no, of course, that was key to us. Like you, many of the concerns raised in our community and around the council table were, would the customer service still be local? Would it be as responsive? Would the trucks be in Barrie so that they could roll quickly when they were needed and so forth? So that, yes, that was a commitment we asked for. In addition, what's happened at that ops center is the roof became our living lab for solar. So early in solar, many years ago, when it was sort of early days for the FIT program, PowerStream chose our facility to test all those technologies. So there's like 12 different kinds of panels installed in the roof. The data was collected there, and although we don't have a great center, it was a really great project because it allowed us to participate in renewables. I can tell you we now have solar installs on all the social housing units in Barrie. We own 1,000 units of social housing, and having that ops center there allowed us to service that and support it, and ultimately do that as part of our social housing portfolio.
Councillor Wetstein.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. You've heard the questions on privatization.
Yes.
Did it come up in your experience?
Absolutely.
And how did you handle it?
So this very simply is the opposite of privatization. It's maintaining this company in public ownership. You would join, if this merger proceeds, you will join 6 other municipalities in owning the company. It is owned by the people of those 6 cities. So while that concern was there, and there was, I think, the natural fear, and it was even felt on our council, that just getting bigger felt like getting private, right? And that ultimately, as we lost control, could it move in that direction and become a private company? I'm here to tell you 10 years later, we're doing great things as a municipally owned utility, and we did the next merger after PowerStream together because that model works so well. When you join like-minded municipalities, you can do great things together. And I use this company as an example of how public ownership can succeed in the electricity industry today, how public ownership can succeed in addressing those technological challenges. We're hugely proud of Electra as a public company. You're going to be proud of it too.
And Councillor Alt.
Thanks very much, Mr. Lehman. I appreciate you coming down here to speak on behalf of Electra. I have one very, very quick question for you. You're in year 8 of a 10-year transition deal, are you not?
I don't know that there's a 10-year.
I thought it was approximately 10 years
to it.
From the Ontario Energy Board. There was a transition period.
Oh, if you're referring to our the MADS application at the time of, I think it was it not 5? Yeah, it was a 5.
So,
it was 5
so you're
years.
Beyond that period.
Thanks.
That's all that I was asking, was wanting to check.
Oh,
so
yes.
It was 5 at that time. Okay, that's
yeah,
fine.
we've emerged
That's all I
from it.
needed to know.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, and over to Councillor Piper.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here. Excellent presentation. Your experience is quite relevant to what we're going through. Barrie and Guelph share many things in common, although I appreciate your comment about comparing yourselves to Guelph and not measuring up.
We try.
One place that we do measure, we compare ourselves to Barrie a lot, but one place that we do actually share something in common is our growth rate. We're rapidly growing cities just outside the Greenbelt, and our growth rates, I believe, are on par. As Barrie has grown in population and size, have the local utility jobs stayed in Barrie? As your customer base has increased, has there been an increase in hires with the operations center in Barrie to keep pace with your growth?
Sure, it's a very fair question. I will look to our staff to confirm that my understanding was post-merger after the changes, yes. With the Brian Benz is nodding. So what I've seen, and I went through the Ops Center about 3 or 4 months ago and talked with some of the employees that were there. There was the decline after the merger where some jobs were moved, and then we have seen it come back up. And I think the reality as well is we're projected to grow very fast, and the commitment has been there from the former Power Stream and now Electra, always to make sure that the service standards are maintained. I mean, the critical thing that, I'm not an executive, I'm a board member, but as I understand it, it is those reliability metrics, those time to respond, the customer service metrics that we're committed to maintain. And if the volume goes up, they hire up to address it.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of council.
And last is Brian Benz, President and CEO of Electra Inc. And whenever you're ready, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and the members of council this evening. And I've listened with great interest over the course of the last 2 or 3 hours to everyone here. And I sense the passion and the pride that people have in this community, and the people have with their utility, and especially Colleen, Dan, Isaiah, Eric, and Krista, who spoke on behalf of Guelph Hydro. They really care about the community. They really care about their customers. They really care about the people that they serve. And if this deal does go through, I would want to work with each one of them to prove to them that this was the right decision for them and the community. That would be my goal as we move forward, because it really is about the people who deliver the service at the end of the day to the communities that we serve that makes these things work. And I've tried to do that over the course of my 25 years in the industry, and I really like to have the opportunity to do that here. I respect the autonomy of council to make this decision tonight. You have to do what's in the best interest of the community and the city of Guelph and its residents. But at the same time, I feel very passionately that this is the right decision for the community. And the reason that I believe that, the business case is strong, I think, and it's been articulated, but to me, in the end, it's always about a vision and values. At the top, you have to agree to where you're going as an organization. You have to be aligned. You have to say we're heading in the same direction. and we're trying to build a better electricity system. We're trying to adapt to a new electricity system. We're trying to innovate and grow and be very customer focused. We're focused on sustainability. We're focused on community. We're focused on employees, and you are too. There's a real connection there in terms of where we need to go. And the values, I think, are very close as well in terms of what we believe in and how we operate our utilities. I heard that here tonight when I listened to all the employees. We share that same passion. We share that same passion in everything we do when we serve all of the communities that we have. And we're very proud of that, as you are. But the vision, I think, is a very compelling reason to look and say, why should we do this deal? The industry is changing. The industry is changing. And I've been in it for a long time too. And it's going through a transformation. And it's because of technology, it's because of consumer preference, it's because consumers want choices, and they're getting choices because of technology. Distributed energy resources are becoming more prevalent. The solar electric vehicles, the long-term energy plan that recently came out said we're going to look at almost 50% of the electric vehicles, or 7 million cars on the road now, almost half of them are going to be electric vehicles in the next 15 to 20 years. And there's going to be more of an integrated grid. There's going to be more exchange of power at the community level. And it's actually a transfer of power from centralized generators to communities, because the communities are going to have the choice. It's not going to be the utility anymore that's in the monopolistic position. It's going to be the consumer that's in that position. And we have to make that change happen. And we're trying to focus on making that change happen. And we think we can make that change happen with the power of partnerships, focusing on communities and customers. And we've done that. We've done that. So people have asked what's going to happen in the Green Energy and Technology Center. And I'll tell you what I think might happen in the Green Energy and Technology Center. We've worked with the independent electricity system operator on battery storage, solar technology in the home that optimizes the battery, optimizes the solar panel in the home, and acts like a combined cycle gas turbine generator. And we've worked with them to see if it can dispatch like a combined cycle gas turbine generator. And we've proven that it can. And we've proven that it can ramp up like it does, except the difference is consumers hold the power, and it's green power, and they have the opportunity to do that. We've partnered with IBM and Interac on blockchain technology to say, how can consumers trade, how can neighbors trade power? If you have a solar panel, I have a battery, you're in a neighborhood, how do we do that? We've got Interac and IBM looking at how that can happen in the community. And those are the kinds of things we want to look at. We've got the largest conservation demand management budget in the province. We're spending almost $400 million on conservation demand management. I heard earlier the Conservation First Framework 2015 to 2020. We have the largest target in the province of 1.6 terawatt hours. And we're going to achieve that target of 1.6 terawatt hours. 1.6 terawatt hours happens to be effectively the total consumption of the city of Guelph in 1 year. That's our CDM target.
Okay. Do you want to do like a one-sentence wrap-up?
One-sentence wrap-up.
Okay, I'm just trying to be respectful, because I did the same thing for everyone else. So.
I can talk about the technical reasons of why this merger makes sense. To me, it's about strategic positioning. It's about having the right partners. It's about believing in the same things, having the same values in a time of change, and knowing that together we're stronger, and together we'll be better.
Okay. So I saw a few hands go up already, so I'll just start with Councillor Piper and then Alt. I actually remembered you from earlier, so I put you on the list, and then I'll go over to you, okay? So Councillor Piper's first.
Great, thank you, and welcome to Guelph.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to hear your delegation. I've been looking forward to it because many of my questions all along have been about the culture of the organization, and you were able to articulate that quite well, what your vision of a utility 2.0 looks like in the future. So my question is, actually I've got a few, but my first question is, how close are you to being utility 2.0 at this point? Are you 80% there? Are you 99%?
No.
Or you're still on the upward swing of 50?
We're still on the upward swing.
Okay.
So when you look at It's about creating very customer-focused, and we are our incumbent utilities have been around for a century as well. We're very community-oriented, we're very customer-focused, but it's in a different way. The power system, we were delivery agent, and it is about reliability, it's about safety, and as a community of local distribution companies, we did a very good job at that. But now it's about innovation, creativity, technology, and the safety and reliability are table stakes. That's a given. So it's about value and innovation. How far are we along? We're in the early days. We're trying to create this culture of innovation. That's why I think the Great Center is endemic to it's critical to our strategy, because we are trying to rebalance. I think we're going to become like an internet of energy, an exchange for energy. And other industries have gone through this. Uber, Airbnb, and the same thing's going to happen in our industry. So we need to create a network of communication and power flow together. It's going to take time. It's going to take money. And that's why I don't have a problem in making the commitment to the green energy and technology. I'd like to see it grow. I want to see it grow. I want these programs like Powerhouse, like microgrid, like EV integration, vehicle-to-grid technologies. I want to commercialize them, so I don't have to build poles and wires. So we can help you achieve your community energy initiative and your greenhouse gas reductions. That's what we're trying to achieve here. It's about redefining the electricity system and the power grid. That's what it's about. It's going to take some time, it's going to take some effort, but we've got seed capital here and hopefully a willing partner.
Great, and that actually a great segue to my next question about the Great Center. As you know, Guelph, the first net zero home, we're blue built home, we've got a lot of corporate partners, our Chamber of Commerce, we've got a lot of businesses who are on board to be part of this next energy revolution. Do you see the Great Center as being something driven by Electra, or do you see the community, our local businesses being partners?
The only way it works is as a partnership. That's the only way. I mean, I started at Guelph Hydro way back when, and then was there when PowerStream came together and Electra came together, and I've seen the evolution of growth, of bringing utilities together. The only way it works is if it's a partnership, and I've always believed that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. We don't know everything. There's things you bring to the table that you do better than we do. We have to be open-minded about that. We learn together. Guelph clearly is a leader in green initiatives and sustainability. That's why I think it's a perfect place for it to be here. Mm-hmm. So no, it would definitely be a collaborative, cooperative process.
And building on that, Mr. Loberg at the beginning of the delegations talked about Electra as an energy solutions provider, and you're familiar with our community energy initiative. You mentioned it in your delegation. Do you also see that part of that energy solution, a thermal utility? I know Markham District Energy, I don't know if you have a direct relationship with Markham District Energy, but do you see Electra being the full spectrum of energy solutions?
We have all of our municipalities have different greenfield, brownfield developments. There's thousands of acres of greenfield, brownfield development. We're working with the developers and the municipalities to say, how can we make those developments green? How can we make them net zero? How can we reduce the carbon profile in those developments? So we've got a great opportunity to actually learn and work with our partners in making that happen. I see us transforming from a poles and wires business to really a customer-facing, comprehensive energy solutions company. That's going to happen over time. Right now it might be 95-5 in terms of poles and wires and sort of these innovative, but I think over time it'll find an equilibrium. We can lead how that change happens if we have the scale and the partnership and the innovation.
Okay. And my last question, at the suggestion of the mayor, I started following you on Twitter recently, and I see that there's lots of amazing things happening and things happening in your social media feed. So I just wondered, as the leader of the Electra organization, what are you most proud of?
Our people. I I mean, that's, like I said, that to me, that's all that matters at the end of the day. If the people are aligned, committed, and feel motivated every day about what they do, then you're going to get good results. And so that's my job, to make sure that the staff, and you know, when you bring companies together, it's not easy. It's a hard thing to do. And change is difficult, there's no question. But helping people through that, you can build things, you can leave a legacy. People want to have meaningful work. They want to feel that what they do matters, and that they leave a legacy at the end of the day. And you know, that's what I try to focus mostly on.
Thank you. I'm going over to Councillor Alt, but Councillor Alt, would I just be okay to ask you to just move a motion to go past 11 for me?
Sure, I'll do that.
Okay, and it's seconded by Councillor Hoffman. We can do a show of hands for that. So all in favor of going past 11, please raise your hands. Okay, anyone against? No one? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Alt, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benz, for coming and attending the meeting and presenting and being prepared to answer questions. Like Councillor Piper, I have more than one, and primarily it's because you're at the end of the list and being asked for all intents and purposes to answer the questions that others sometimes were not able to, or there was not an opportunity. So there's a couple of things. A lot of them are just technical, but I still need them asked. With regards to the shareholders, this is just a geography lesson as much as anything else, and a population lesson. With the division of the number of shareholders by municipality, how is it that Mississauga and Vaughan end up with the numbers that they get, whereas Guelph and St. Catharines end up with the numbers that they get? It's just purely a technical question.
In terms of the relative percentage ownership of the company?
Yeah, because honestly, I know nothing about the size of Vaughan.
Yeah.
I thought Vaughan was a village somewhere around the bottom of Lake Simcoe.
Vaughan's grown quite a bit. And I guess you have to understand some of the genesis. Like there was a question earlier around the relative size of St. Catharines versus Guelph. So early on, for example, one of the reasons, and Vaughan has seen significant growth. I went from Barrie to Vaughan and then Powerstream. And so they're now over 300,000 population. And in 2002, there was a merger of Unipower in York Region, 5 utilities in York Region, Aurora, Markham, Richmond Hill, Vaughan, and Newmarket. That merger never happened. After that merger happened, Markham and Vaughan purchased Richmond Hill Hydro for $150 million. So they're bringing more to the table than they had before. So they've seen massive growth. They bought half of Richmond Hill. So you got to understand the history of all of it to understand sort of all of the
it's putting pieces of the puzzle together, that's all. Thanks, I appreciate that. Now, going to the bottom of the list, Mr. Lehman from Barrie had stated that the ops center in Barrie is still operational.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you can clarify, if a clarification needs to be made. Yeah. What is the difference between an ops center versus a hub, or is there a difference?
The main functions that reside there would be the metering, protection and control, lines, and fleet facilities, those kinds of things, purchasing stores, warehousing would reside there. There are some back office functions there as well. We even had call center functions, residual call center, residual IT functions there. That area did see, as Mayor Lehman indicated, when we brought together some of the back office, there was a dip. But over time, we did want to make that a regional hub in central Ontario. So we serve areas in New Tecumseth, Bradford, West Gwillimbury, Penetanguishene. We dispatch crews out of Barrie to those areas. So it is a regional hub. And as those areas, and Bradford's seen a lot of growth. And as those areas have seen growth, that regional hub has seen growth in terms of crews, and there's other ancillary benefits like the mayor described in terms of restoration times of outage.
And that actually almost answers the question I was going to ask Mr. Loberg, which was, is there a Penetanguishene hub? But it's serviced out of Barrie.
Serves out of Barrie. The
okay,
crews
so
are
it's a ways
dispatched out
away.
of
Okay,
Barrie.
thanks.
Yeah.
The next question's unrelated to these. First of all, dealing with the green hub or the GR, the GREAT. I was just curious, with regards to the numbers that have been batted around, 5 million and 3 million, how is that actually to be distributed from the original seed 5 million to the 3 million per year? What are the projections on what that might be used for?
Well, I think I was trying to explain in that list of, so like I said, we recently, for example, we're looking at in our integrated regional resource plan with the ISO in the northern GTA, they have capacity for, they have electrical load growth. They're adding 10 to 20,000 new residents, new customers in the Buttonville area. So we're saying, we're working, how can we service that load growth? And so we looked at a transformer station, 200 MVA transformer station. We also looked at solar battery technology, the powerhouse system, and we were going to launch it. We were going to say, don't build the transformer station. Don't build the 12 egress circuits that come out with 1,000 MCM cable and go all over the streets, and you've got congestion. Put in solar and battery in the home. We don't have to build that. On that one, we couldn't because of the timing of the load. There is another one coming in. That one, we want to not build a transformer station. We want to build solar battery. And we're working with the ISO, but we need to take it to the next level of commercialization. We started it with smart grid funding in 20 homes in Vaughan. We're expanding it to 50 to 100 homes in Markham. We want to get it out to 5,000 homes so that we can actually commercial. We'll do that here. So that's and we have what's called a DERM distributed energy resource management software provider, who actually it's all about the software, because the software controls the battery, it controls the solar panel, and it monitors the grid, and it optimizes all of that, and it can actually dispatch all of the power into the grid on an aggregated basis from the community. You need to do a lot of research. Yeah. You need to do a lot to understand to make this stuff work. Yeah. And that's what we want to do here. That's one example. And
that clearly was one of the skepticisms that came up from the public, not knowing specifics about what the Green Hub was going to do. It seemed rather amorphous, and it was a projection into the future without anything that was tangible.
We have live examples of organic growth and power system planning that actually will change the way we do distribution system planning. My hope is it comes out of research and innovation that comes out of the Green Energy and Technology Center here.
Okay, two final questions, I think. First one, there was reference made to increases in commercial rates in an earlier presentation, and truly, I do not remember who said it. But my concern in Guelph is that, and I think this is substantially different than Barrie, so I hope I'm not comparing apples and oranges, but one of the things is that Guelph attempts to grow its commercial base and its industrial base, and what I am concerned is sustaining reasonable electrical rates and power rates to sustain the attraction of industry in this area, lest we become just one more community on the 401. I was wondering if you could comment on that threat of significant rate increases for commercial operations.
Well, I mean, I think the business case is pretty clear that there's two custom IR, so you're going to rebase twice over the course of the next 10 years. Under this scenario, those rebasings aren't going to happen. So you're going to see two humps as you rebase your assets, and you made what's called custom IR applications to the OEB. You're not going to do that now. So that is actually, avoiding rate increases over the 10-year period. And you have your own separate rate zone. Yeah. We have 4 separate rate zones in Electra for 10 years. And then at the end of the 10 years, our goal is to harmonize those rates in a way that has the minimal impact on the consumers. That's the plan in Electra. That would be the plan with Guelph too.
Okay, and it's probably after the 10 years that's most significant in this.
Yes.
Do you equate consumer with commercial and industrial
Yes,
operations?
absolutely. For every rate class.
That's fine. Thanks.
Yes.
The last thing, it's a question that was also brought up by another presentation, that, and I don't know whether this is true or not, I've just heard this from tonight, that rate increases for Electra relative to Guelph are significantly higher. And what that twigged for me was, and I just want an assurance, that the dividend increases are not on the backs of rate increases.
No, because our rate plans don't change. So the rate plan I had prior to this merger in the Electra service area is exactly the same as the one going forward. So it's not funding it.
Thank you.
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As per Mr. Bent, you're kind of like the big billy goat in this, where everyone passes down the questions to you. I think that you heard a few of our delegates tonight, and it was articulated, I think most by our delegate Donna Jennison, who said, I think because of we seem to have a pride in this community of our ability to stay local and our own autonomy, so that there's a built-in suspicion about whether bigger is better. And I understand that. I've also heard some good comments this evening that in some cases you even mentioned that bigger can be better in terms of service. I also heard that sometimes there's customer dissatisfaction if they find it too big. Can you tell us, maybe with broad strokes, what the growth goals of Electra are? Like how big do you want to get?
Yeah, it's a good question. The way we look at it is on a case-by-case basis. So it's always around, does it add value? First of all, are you aligned? Are you aligned in your thinking? That's the first test. And then is there an economic benefit? And can we enhance our strategic positioning? If you can answer yes to those questions, you probably should look at it. If you can answer, if no is an answer to any of those, you probably should, give it some second consideration. I don't have a number that says, we want to be, I think we have good scale at 1 million customers. I think we do. We probably have sufficient scale in the new world of energy to do the things we need to do and innovate. But if there were other utilities, mostly in the GTHA, who were interested in becoming part of this group, I think collectively we owe it to our customers and our shareholders and everyone to look at it. But I would look at it through those tests.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
And Councillor Hoffman is the last on the list.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Guthrie, too. Mr. Bentz, thank you for being here. So earlier you were speaking about one of your best assets being your people. So I'm really concerned about the loss of jobs. And I wonder, will there be employees that will be given an opportunity to relocate? And also, will there be training provided for the employees whose jobs will become redundant?
Yeah, so like I said, if the employees aren't engaged and they don't feel like they're treated fairly, it doesn't work. We had this issue we came across this very issue with Brampton, and Rosanna talked about that, because they were purchased and they felt like, second-class citizens. Horizon, PowerStream, and EnerSource own Electra. Hydro One Brampton didn't own Electra. They had no one on the board representing them. So we thought we have to go out of our way to make sure that everyone has the same chance at jobs, positions, and training, relocation, all of that. And Guelph would be no different. It would be no different, because if you either treat everyone the same or you don't, and if you have two sets of employees, then you don't have a team. And all I can say is time would tell, but we do have experience, and I think generally speaking, we've tried really hard to be fair. and look after our employees, whether it's relocations and we're working through some of those issues now on collective bargaining in terms of how we relocate employees. But the goal is to treat everyone fairly and support them.
Thank you for that. And we did hear how well you do treat your employees or future employees. So thanks for that. I want to talk a little bit more about the Green Renewable Energy and Technology Center. And I think you talked, maybe you covered off how will this create jobs and attract investment. I think you spoke a bit to that. I also wonder about, you've heard of our Community Energy Initiative, yes. And I know you said it in your delegation, and then Councillor Piper spoke about our Community Energy Initiative. What would Electra's commitment be to our energy?
Well, I mean, I think you have to translate your goal of 50% GHG reduction by 2035. You have to translate that into actionable plans and measurable plans. And I'm sure you've done that, but I think this is another vehicle, and this is something that we would want to work with you on. How can we translate the Community Energy Initiative in the City of Guelph to objectives that are set in the research, innovation, and commercialization in the Green Energy and Technology Center? You have to connect the plan to what we're doing at the center. We probably need to coordinate that through the municipality. I mean, we have initiatives here that will naturally reduce GHGs in terms of, like I was talking about, converting building power systems to building renewable energy and behind the meter, those kinds of things. But actually, figuring out what you're doing and how you're going to achieve your goal is I think the next step, would be a logical next step that we would work on probably in 2018 because this, I think the transaction's expected to be completed if it goes through at the end of next year. So we'd have a year to actually plan and build those two together.
I would agree with that. Thank you very much. That we do have to look at how we're going to make that happen. And maybe you can share your views around how you see that making it happen. But I thought, would it be possible if we do have a task force that is working on exactly that, and there are a group of community members, and they're working hard on doing that. Would you see something like including them on maybe an advisory committee?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, that's a logical next step.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming, and because you are the last, I will, on behalf of council, just thank everyone for coming and delegating tonight. It is back to council now for us to ask further questions of clarity or whatnot. And I'm looking for someone, if they're willing to put the motion on the floor, and then you're putting the motion on the floor, Councillor Salisbury, seconded by Councillor Hoffland. And then to Councillor Billings, sorry, I saw your hand. Did you want to move it, or did you want to ask questions? Oh, it's already moved. It's already been moved and seconded. Yeah. But did you want to ask questions now? Okay, go ahead. And then anyone else want to ask questions? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
They're right there. Go for it.
I see them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, it's just first I want to ask, I guess, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Punkage. Okay, so we know this merger lends itself to great angst, and because we've talked, it's really hard because my head says to merge, and my heart has always said not to merge, and so first of all we look at the emotional culture and job loss, and that's real, and we can't dismiss that, and that's the part that hurts. The local control with this agreement is gone, like totally gone, but it's the financial side that I was asking all the questions about, and that I was finding it was difficult to refute what you had in place. But the one area that still kind of bothers me, and so I just wanted you to clarify this, and that is the $18.5 million. So So we're being offered, and so in the agreement, so on the financial side, what we have for sure is the 4.63, and we have, quote, this dividend coming, this special dividend. Outside of that, with respect to dividends in the future, that's all up to the board. Nothing is guaranteed. We know that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So back to the $18.5 million. So if that were converted to equity, we would increase the ownership, but are you saying with respect to this deal that is not possible? The most that we could get out of this deal is the 4.63, and we could not increase our ownership.
That's absolutely correct.
Is it possible, if you say no, I totally understand, but is it possible that you could explain through you, Mr. Mayor, why we can't have, because it's $18.5 million, and so, you know, instead of taking that cash and put it into ownership, we would get more of a dividend. It makes more sense to me, and that's why I'm struggling with this 4.63%.
Sure, I'll start, and then maybe Troy can also add to it. But as we were going through the negotiations with Electra, one thing we should all keep in mind is that Electra is, of course, itself a merger in the purchase of Hydro One Brampton, and they've made commitments to their shareholders as they formed. And one of the commitments that they've made to their shareholders is a certain dividend pattern that they can expect out of their merger. So anything that, when we come to the table, anything that dilutes that dividend pattern is a problem, and at the end of the day, not on the table. And so the 4.63 was and the 18.5 is a combination of all of those aspects to this deal, where we come up with an ownership percentage that's reasonable for all partners in the deal, all 7 communities and shareholders. And the $18.5 million is then the, I hate to use the word plug, but it's the vehicle that we use to bring us to parity from a balance sheet perspective. And I don't know, Troy, if you want to.
Yeah, no, I think you've summarized it well. That $18.5 million is money that, frankly, Gessie had on hand to fund future infrastructure, that it needed to fund that. And Electra is now assuming that obligation, but that frees us to actually be able to pay that money out to GMHI through a special dividend. And I'd echo all of Pankaj's earlier comments.
Okay, and also through you, Mr. Mayor. In the report, I think it says the value of Gessie is it 129 million? Pankaj, is that close?
That's correct.
Okay, so then can you explain to me, because you get all these numbers and values floating around, so can you please explain the difference then between the enterprise value and the book value, and just explain it.
Sure, maybe I'll take a crack at it. The enterprise value, we often liken it to the value of the house. And what happens when you say, well, what is enterprise value and what is equity value? A good way to look at it is enterprise value is the value of the house. And then when you subtract the debt off it or the mortgage, you get to your equity value. And that's really how enterprise value differs from equity value.
Okay, and so again, through you, Mr. Mayor, what's Gessie's enterprise value?
$205 million.
Okay, also through you, Mr. Mayor, this I want your help, Pankaj, and just to ease my mind, and that is when we look at, again, I'm going to go back to the dividends, because that will be a board decision down the road. And so now it's not like we received and could analyze income statements and balance sheets. So basically we have to take the reports at face value. And so again, there's promises and projections. So you know, in the past, I'm very skeptical when it comes to looking at promises and projections. So I was just wondering, can you help me out? And so how confident are you that these dividend projections are accurate? And why is that different than the other projects I've dealt with in the past where things just keep going sideways?
Sure, I'd be happy to, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councillor Billings, what you have to understand, and I think you all do, is we are regulated companies that are coming together. We're fundamentally regulated by the OEB in all aspects of distribution service, right? So, as regulated companies, one of the key tenets that the OEB sets for us is something called rate base. And rate base forms the core of our financial modeling that Grant Thornton's done. And it's the projection that we take out over time. And rate base isn't a complicated structure. It's fairly simple. It's your net fixed assets plus a working capital allowance. So you've got a good starting point with your balance sheets, et cetera, that give you that net fixed asset. That's, your starting point is an approved rate base. And that's the underpinning of the certainty that I've got with this deal. I wouldn't be bringing it to you here through, the team. It's the regulatory construct that's underpinning all of us that sets the stage for this projection. And on that basis, that same construct has a return on equity component, which underpins the dividend flow, and return of, which is the depreciation, et cetera, and your operating expenses, et cetera. But the dividend flow, which is underpinned by that regulatory construct, is really what's driving this, and that's the confidence we can get from it.
Okay. So then also, thank you for that. Also, though, I wanted to ask you, because it came up before with Mr. Bentz, and that is rate zones. So if I have a small business right now, and what was said was, okay, so after 10 years we'll try to harmonize, but we know as far as the rates go for our businesses in Guelph, our rates are lower. So we want to keep them lower for our businesses. But I thought after 10 years, like, you would have to have, it would have to be very, very, very close. The rates would have to be very close in order to harmonize, because I thought we had these rate zones so that we could keep it even past the 10 years. So can you explain that one? Because I would be very concerned if I was a business owner in Guelph.
Yes, absolutely. And through you, Mr. Mayor. So as Brian has pointed out, the legacy electric utilities are all operating in separate rate zones right now. We would seek the same regulatory treatment, so there would be a Guelph rate zone. And to be clear, our general service and large user rates are significantly lower than the other electric utilities. Our residential rates are slightly higher. But the concept of the rate zones, and again, Brian alluded to this, that once you're on a certain regulatory mechanism, in our case, price cap IRM, you stay in that plan for the entire sit-out period. So your rate zone continues on inflation less a stretch factor increase for at least 10 years. At that point, when you go back and get rebased, and these are all these technical terms that regulatory wonks like to use, when you get back into your rebasing, if the synergies, et cetera, from the merger have not caught up, you are not compelled to harmonize the rate classes amongst the rate zones. You can continue to operate as a separate rate zone, but you still have to rebase and undergo the cost allocation exercise and make sure and satisfy the OEB that that's still the case, et cetera. So this merger has the potential to keep at least our general service and large user rates at a low and steady inflation-less increase trajectory that Brian also pointed out for a very long period of time. You avoid the cost of service bumps over time. So I hope, I hope that's clear, but happy to elaborate.
That was helpful, very helpful, because I was questioning this whole, again, okay, after 10 years, right? Because I thought if it was immaterial, right, then that's when you would harmonize. But you're saying it's not as simple as that. There's other factors involved, right? Is that
absolutely correct? Right, yeah. And so, in 10 years, it's almost like an up periscope. So you put up your periscope and see where you are with your synergies, and your cost allocation exercise has to be redone. And if the savings are then caught up, you might then formulate a plan to harmonize. If they haven't, there's nothing compelling you to harmonize.
Okay. Also, through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just, I want to go back to the whole, to understand that whole comparison with St. Catharines, because they have the 4.63, we have the 4.63. But something also happened, like was something purchased, and that's why the difference. And I was wondering if you could explain that again, because it was touched on before, but I think there was something else that happened or something else that was purchased.
Yeah, there was two distinct things that happened that have allowed the shift that has occurred over time. So because St. Catharines participated in both the Horizon merger and then the Electra merger, so they are now benefiting in the terms of their value because of the synergies, the $426 million of synergies from the original Electra merger. The second thing that happened is in the formation of Electra, they acquired Hydro One Brampton. And so they've fully acquired that, and it was heavily debt financed. So all of the equity value that's created is now accruing to the Electra shareholders because of that transaction. And St. Catharines, as one of the Electra shareholders, benefits from that as well. So when you heard the earlier comments saying there was a $60 million differential, that's incorrect. This is actually driven by the transactions that have occurred since St. Catharines has moved forward over that period of time as part of Electra.
Okay, and also too, pardon?
I'm just saying it was incorrect. It was good.
That was good. So also through you, Mr. Mayor, and also, even though we're sitting at the 4.63 as well, if we weren't taking, hypothetically, I know it can't happen, but we're taking this 18.5 million. So if we didn't, and that was actually converted into equity, then it would be higher than 4.63. I don't know what it would be, but would it be at least probably 5 or more %?
It probably would be in that ballpark. It's I don't have the exact math in my head, but it just, unfortunately though, that's not available because of the damage it would cause the other shareholders. But
No, but what I'm saying is, if you're trying to compare Guelph to St. Catharines and what happened, and saying that we're sitting at the same. However, if we didn't take that 18.5, that would put us maybe over 5%.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the math. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Westing.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So,
actually, I'm just looking at the time, everyone, as well, and not to rush. I don't want to be accused of that. I'm only looking at our procedural bylaw and whatnot as well. So, just being aware of time. Just before you start, I have Councillor Westing, Gordon, Piper, Hoffman, Salisbury. Okay, and Downer. So.
We're past 11. That's okay, right?
Yep.
Okay. I think the $60,000 question, we've received it in a bunch of different ways, in a bunch of different emails, and it was raised tonight by one of the delegates. So that's the $60,000 that you just answered for Councillor Billings, is that correct? Or 60 million, sorry.
That's correct.
That's right. Is that also roughly the difference between the 130 and the 205?
Well, the 130 and the 205, I think if you're referring to the enterprise value and the equity value, is that correct? The difference really is just the debt on Gessie's balance sheet.
Right, okay. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Over to Councillor Gordon.
We were just arguing about who
how you
had
doing
to
over
ask
there?
the question.
Stop merging and answer the question.
I'm just not used to Councillor Westing being so quick.
I could say something else if you like.
Yeah. No. We're good. We're good. Councillor Gordon, you have the floor.
Yes. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to use the floor to because these fine folks don't have this opportunity to go a little deeper in some of the questions that they were asking. And my first one is, I think if there is a common theme to many of our delegates, many of the letters and emails, it's what's the rush? Can we defer? I would love to hear from staff the actual impact and risks involved when we do, in a negotiation like this, do go down that route towards a pause or a deferral.
I think I'll go to Ron. Okay, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you for that question. For Guelph staff, councillors, and even us as consultants, it's been a long, at times difficult journey to get to tonight. Councillors will be very, very aware of that. Guelph has expended significant time, money, and resources, carry out financial analysis, draft legal agreements, conduct due diligence, and negotiate a deal with Electra. Electra, of course, has also committed time, money, resources, and Electra has done the heavy lifting involved in putting a deal before their municipal shareholders as well. As we've heard, in fact, 4 of their municipal shareholders have already, some subject to ratification, but have already approved the transaction that is in front of us tonight. A delay on Guelph's side wouldn't just mean uncertainty and additional expense for Guelph, it would be that for Electra as well. And uncertainty with regard to whether the deal would go forward. given where it's already put the deal before it's 4 of its shareholders, it would mean restarting that process of ratification on their side and approval. And it would mean, again, even if Guelph is willing to wait, create the uncertainty, create the risks around going forward, there's absolutely no guarantee that Electra would be willing to do that or would be willing to reopen discussions on anything further. In short, so the deal in front of us is the deal. There is no other deal. And that's the deal that's already gone forward in terms of the Electra internal process. I don't know that Electra would want to continue that process. Not moving forward tonight would cast doubt on the deal as a whole with no necessary prospect that there would be a future deal. In sum, I think deferral of a decision on this transaction creates a significant risk, if not likelihood, that there would be no transaction, in fact.
Thank you. So I guess the short summary is that it's kind of all or nothing at this point. Yeah.
It would be difficult to kind of restart.
Yes.
It's the potential of going back to the drawing board really
Sure.
from the start. It's hard. This is the deal.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Another question I'm referring, just because of some of you know it's a personal interest of mine, came from Ms. Folk Dawson. And that was because this is such a huge cultural shift for a lot of reasons. I wonder, she speculated about this, but in this extraordinary decision we're making, what was the level of First Nations consultation in this process?
I can start through you, Mr. Mayor. So I worked at OPG for a brief period, and that company has a very formal process to engage Native First Nations peoples. We certainly did not do any of that here. So I guess the short answer would be we didn't do it because we didn't. At least I didn't think there was a requirement to. Meaning no disrespect to the speaker, but it did not come up on my radar.
Okay, thank you. No, I only ask it, I don't ask it out of accusation or disrespect. In this year of truth and reconciliation, it has often been, there's been efforts made to make that more inclusive in those decisions. My last question is actually returning to the Community Energy Initiative, and I'm pleased to see it come up more in conversation. To me, it could be a very important step to make sure that it is a robust part of our, as we move forward. As Dr. Goldberg was saying, we know that even just with a modest improvement in efficiency, 25% that we would obtain through it, we could keep $150 million in the local economy every year, and also every $1 million we spend in energy efficiency through programs like GEARS, we could create 21 jobs. So it is important, I think, for this community to know a little bit more, other than on page 44 it says, the Great Centre will support the City of Guelph's strategies for environmental stewardship, job creation, innovation, and prosperity, which is great to see. I'm not sure who could answer this on staff, but is there, as we move forward through these negotiations, an actual business plan or something that we could identify as these are the steps that will be taken to make sure that that is a commitment and a robust connection for our CEI?
Is it you, Ryan, that would answer that? Yes? Okay.
I'm happy to.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, there is a business plan for a Great Centre, and there's binding commitments around the investments and the time periods with the Great Centre. So it's not vaporware we're talking about at all. And we heard, I think, a wonderful description from Brian Bentz about his vision for what it would be. And my job as a lawyer is to take kind of statements and make them into legally binding commitments. and I feel we've done that job here through some of those tough negotiations that I alluded to earlier. We have legally binding commitments on personnel. We have legally binding commitments on the time periods. We have legally binding commitments on capital expenditure, on ongoing expenditures on an annual basis. And we have enforceable remedies if those are failed to be met.
And Barb would also like to comment as well.
Sure.
Sorry, Councillor Gordon.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gordon, beyond as part of the legally binding commitments, we have secured a seat on the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, a community-based seat, at least one. I'm hoping for more, but definitely there is that security there. And we've already begun conversations with our Energy Guelph Task Force around how do we begin to have the next step conversations about how we support the development and the realization and implementation of the community energy plan. The strategic business plan that you have in your package tonight is really only the beginning of the process of determining the details of what that center will be like and how it will function. And Electra folks have made the commitment to our community energy folks to develop that in conversation with them over the next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Over to this side, Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, all of my questions have been answered, so I'll wait for comments.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I'll come back to you first for comments then. And so just questions at this time. Councillor Hoffman, did you have comments?
No, I have another
question. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Guthrie. I want to talk about HR again. I don't believe it matters if it's one job or if it's 30 jobs. It's never pleasant. So I would like to give staff the opportunity to speak to the job loss and the HR plan that is in place, especially around perhaps the transition timetable, because when I think about the dates, I think we're looking at perhaps 1.5 or 2 years down the road, but I need that verified. And if there will be retraining opportunities. If you could take that for me, Mr. Sardana.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hoffman. So I completely agree with you. You know, job losses and redundancies, as we like to call them, are never pleasant. You know, I've gone through that experience once before, and I can guarantee you I never want to go through it again. But having said that, I can give you, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent first. So, you know, we've been chatting with Electra for a long time now, many months and many weeks. And we've had the pleasure of working with their staff on a very technical and detailed model, et cetera. But they've been nothing but gracious. And to me, that graciousness doesn't come from, it obviously comes from the people, but it comes from the tone at the top. And I think Brian's gone through that. So that's the tangent, that I can't imagine a company like Electra suddenly, you know, doing a left turn on us and saying, "Oh yeah, that was just for fun. Now we're as lambs to the slaughter." I don't believe so. I think they are a caring company from what we've seen. You know, certainly the discussions we've had with them through the working groups, et cetera, they will offer those kinds of opportunities to our people. There is, as you've mentioned, a fairly long runway, so we will have time to prepare and plan. You know, as Brian's also mentioned, we're going to file a MADS application next year, and of course, you know, the process could take a year, could take less than a year, but we're not sure, but it'll take time. You know, if and when this is approved, we'll start to implement some of those plans and training programs, et cetera, for employees, and, you know, allow them the opportunity to get to know the other culture. You know, so that's what we have today. That's what we know today.
I appreciate that, Mr. Sardana. I have another question, if I may, Mayor Guthrie, around. I have so much paper here. It's a bit overwhelming. I wonder. This is just maybe a yes or no question. Maybe I should know this, but the USA, or the unanimous shareholder agreement, will that ever become a public document?
Unfortunately, or fortunately not, this is documentation that's been entered into by the existing shareholders of Electra, and we're signing up to it as well with the changes necessary to accommodate Guelph. We've kind of described at a high level what it is, but the issue is, of course, in any future transactions that Electra may undertake, it would be too much disclosure and possibly prejudice its position. And if Guelph is part of that, it would have every interest in also protecting the confidentiality of those arrangements.
I appreciate that. I have had some inquiries, so I want to be able to respond to my constituents to let them know the status on the shareholder agreement. One last question, and I heard you describe to Councillor Billing the rate harmonization, and I wish it could be described more succinctly because I'm really not understanding. I mean, I understand the rate harmonization, but the way you're explaining it, it doesn't sound like it's a good news story. And isn't it a really good news story?
No, Councillor Hoffman, you're absolutely right. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It is absolutely a good news story. So one of the main reasons I am so firmly behind this deal is because of that provision that is set by the regulator, and which is our general service in Guelph, general service rates, which are commercial customers, and large user rates, which are our large, UFG and some of the other people that we know quite well. Their rates will be on a very, very moderate rate increase path for the next 10 years. So it'll be inflation as defined by the OEB minus a certain factor, minus a percent. In our case, it's 0.3. And they will have rate certainty because you can pretty well figure out where inflation is going to go. As compared to if we were standing alone, we would have unavoidable rate increases in 2021 and 2026 and then 2031 and so on. That 5-year pattern would continue. So if I've misled you at all, I apologize, but the rate harmonization deferral is a very good news story, and the sit-out period is a very good news story for ratepayers.
Thank you.
I've got 3 more. Councillor Salisbury is first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions, just as a reminder?
Yeah, these are questions. I have some comments at the end, but staff knows I sent them 5 pages of questions on Monday, so I'm surprised to have any at all, but I do. I have 2 questions. One that's come up with the 10-year sit-out period. The language used was at the end of the 10 years, we are not compelled to rebase. My understanding of some of these things is this idea of the no harm test. So we are not compelled to, but we may, or we are not compelled to, and we have guidelines to adhere to as well.
So through you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councillor Salisbury, we are not, I didn't say we're not compelled to rebase. We are not compelled to harmonize.
Correct.
So we will go through a rebasing after the sit-out period. If at that time the cost allocation and rate design work that our regulatory staff will do shows that it makes sense to harmonize, then we might propose that plan to the OEB. But the OEB's own provisions through their MADS application handbook clearly says you are not compelled to harmonize.
Okay, and that was, I apologize, that was the word I meant to use, not compelled to harmonize, but in the event that, in the event that harmonizing is beneficial to our base, great. In the event that harmonizing is less than ideal for our base, we may not be compelled to, but that doesn't mean that we won't. And so my question is around the no harm aspect. In the event that it is less than ideal, is the protection more than simply not compelled to? And in fact, if it's not positive, we are not allowed to.
So my peripheral vision is picking up a lot of nods, which is good, which is exactly what I was going to do, and that is absolutely right. So we are not required to harmonize.
Thank you very much. The other question is with regards to the nodding heads, and I had an off-the-cuff comment from a constituent who said something along the lines, and it speaks back to a delegate who said inherently suspicious, that our consultants were in fact somehow had a relationship with Electra and we're representing their needs over ours. I wonder if we could just set the record straight with regards to the relationship that our consultants may or may not have with Electra and their my expectation and understanding is that you guys have been looking out for our best interests through this entire process. If you could speak to that.
Yeah, Grant Thornton has no relationship at all with Electra and has never worked for Electra. And Grant Thornton, under the terms of our engagement, has a duty of care to Guelph.
Okay.
Aaron Burles has certain lawyers, I'm not among them, have acted for Electra in the past on completely unrelated matters. This was disclosed early on, consented to. I personally have actually acted opposite Electra and continue to do so obviously here. And there are fiduciary duty, law society, ethical rules, reputational issues all around this where, you know, suffice it to say, our duty is to Guelph and GMHI and GESI.
And I appreciate that. That was my expectation, is for the benefit of this constituent who said they'd be watching tonight if they haven't gone to bed already. Thank you very much.
Councillor Downer.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So many of my questions were answered too around the CEI and various things. I just want the long runway for around the different things with the employees being redundant or whether they're relocating. Did I miss how long that runway is? I've heard 2 to 3 years. Is that 1 to 3?
I think it would be, thanks to you, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Downer, I think it would be safe to say that it's between 1 and 3 years, depending on the function. Okay. So, you know, I think Mr. Loberg mentioned in his opening remarks that, you know, they're going through their integration right now, the Electra utilities, and that's taking time. But, you know, as things progress, if they can do their integration faster, they may then start to turn their attention to us. And certainly it'll depend on the functions and the types of systems, et cetera. But current indications are that the process will begin on Jan 1, 2019, and it could extend out to 2022, depending on the function. So. Okay,
great, thank you. The other question then was around, I had 2 more. The 14 utilities that we had discussions with, so this question I think is for Ron then. What, a lot of people are concerned and naming companies and things like utilities. My only assumption is that they would all have been public because that was our criteria. But why is that confidential information? If you could, people seem to want to know who they are and what was that process around the due diligence with them?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, they sign non-disclosure agreements, so that's the first and most basic issue. But secondly, the policy behind that was to facilitate an exchange of information without having to go up through a council approval process, et cetera. So that could take place at the initial stages. Because they were preliminary at that point, and to facilitate even initial discussions, it was necessary to put in place those confidentiality arrangements.
Okay. The other question, I saw Pankaj shaking his head. I know we have, like, during peak times, there's, you know, different times of days we have savings, but I saw you shake your head when one delegation said that we have peak saver technology, and so maybe if you could just clarify that. Do we have that or no?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councillor Downer, the peak saver program that's run by the IESO has been shelved. It's been shelved for a while. Whether it's a temporary shelving or a permanent shelving, we're not sure, but it's done.
It's done. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Last is Councillor Gibson before I go to comments.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I want to thank Councillor Downer. I was going to double down on that 14 touch points because I thought that was a really important topic for the community to hear, that this was not a one sole source sort of Electra deal from the beginning. We had that integrity of process, which I talk about, and the 14 different groups. So thank you, Councillor Downer. That answered my question. Appreciate it.
And I'm sorry, I'm back over to Councillor Westing.
Thanks very much. This is my 3rd question, and that's about 12 behind Councillor Gordon. we've talked a little bit about privatization, and I think we've left a message. We were really clear we don't want to sell, so this is no indication of any interest to sell anything. But there is a question out there about whether this is a sale or not. And clearly, I just want to restate for the benefit of the public that even though we may have 4.63%, it's worth $130+ million depending on where you're at in the marketplace. And even though we would have to go through hoops to deal with that, people need to know that is something that is an asset that we still own that has market value. Is that accurate? And is the market value, if we were to look at it on the market, would you say 130 is a rough market value of that?
That's correct.
Okay.
The equity value is.
No, I was looking at market value. That's
I would use the term fair market value, and that is exactly what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the money somebody would give us.
That is correct.
Right. And then they can have the debt that goes with whatever they buy.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. And then just briefly on the 18.5, we keep talking about it. And I don't remember what the answer was. If the 18.5 stayed in the deal, my understanding is it would not affect the 4.63.
Yeah, the 18.5 million, and maybe just a couple comments around that.
Right.
So firstly, one of the benefits of doing this deal is it frees up that money from the Guelph balance sheet.
Right.
Otherwise, if we were standalone, we would need that money to pay for our upcoming capital expenditures. So that's the first piece.
Right.
If we did leave the $18.5 million in the company, then we would have to get something else for that value. And if you left it in the company, then we would have to take a higher ownership percentage. But as touched upon by some of the earlier speakers, we can't do that because it actually starts to dilute the dividends of the other Electra shareholders and obviously would not be fair to them.
Right. So it's not that it doesn't have value, it's that because of the structure and the negotiations, we can't do it that way. And
Correct.
Also, we're not paying any tax on the 18.5 million, right?
It's an intercompany dividend, so no, you wouldn't be.
No, thank you.
So I'm at comments now. One more question, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just real quick because of course over and over and over again, because I mean I felt the same way. I did not want to sell Guelph Hydro, so I think it's important for you, Pankaj, to basically sum it up as our CEO, because you know everything behind the scenes. So, I mean, it's a decision to merge or not to merge, and you're in the position to comment about if we do not merge. So, you know, your comment about, you know, the right merger, the right reasons, the right time, I think you should walk us through that.
Sure, I'd be happy to, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, I've mentioned the rate story. Right, I think that's the first piece for me. It's a very compelling rate story. You know, our ratepayers have been paying very high rates for a very long period of time, and that's, you know, not distribution rates per se, but commodity rates, et cetera. And, you know, we're not going to get into policy issues, et cetera, because leave that aside. They've been paying high rates, right? And this brings them some measure of rate relief for a very long period of time, which is a good thing. It's a good news story right from there. Okay, so then I'm going into, you know, our first principles here, right? So we said value for the customer, and there it is. Value for this community, so and the shareholder, and let's lump those together. What are you getting? You're getting a great center. You're getting a tie now into your community energy initiative and other good innovation and technology. You are getting $18.5 million, and let's not kid ourselves about, you know, those comments about, well, it's Gessie's cash and, you know, it would have been Gessie's cash. No, GMHI owns Gessie. It is GMHI's money, okay? So let's not pretend about things like that. So you are getting an $18.5 million dividend, which is a very good thing for GMHI. It's going to extract some value up front. It is also getting a 4.63% ownership stake in what is looking to me like a very fabulous company. It's an innovative company. It's growing. You've heard from their CEO today. It's about people for him, and that's the value. You know, my people are terrified of this. We've heard from, you know, Hydro One Brampton, ex-Hydro One Brampton, that they're in the journey together with Electra, and it's been a good journey. So I think for me, there have been red flags and yellow flags along the way, and all those flags have been now removed because of all those compelling points.
Thank you, Pankaj.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'm about to go to comments and then I'll call the vote, but I would imagine that probably the comments might take us to just past 12. So actually, just to be very clean procedurally, I would like to ask the mover and the seconder to remove that motion for a moment, to withdraw your motion. Thank you. And then just to now move the motion to go to suspend the procedural bylaw for a moment. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Salisbury, seconded by Councillor Hoffman. 3/4 in favor of that for me, please. So all in favor of that. That's unanimous. Thank you. And now the second one would be to go past 12. Thank you, Councillor Salisbury. Someone over here want a second for me? Councillor Downer. And again, I'll call the vote on that one, please. If I could see that's unanimous. Thank you very much. I'm going back to Councillor Salisbury to remove the original motion. Yes. Seconded still by Councillor Hoffman. Thank you. Okay. It's not my first rodeo. So we are now back to comments, and I did promise Councillor Piper that I would go to her first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Comments. And well executed, that last series of motions. I'm still processing. I guess the comments part of the agenda this late at night is where we wrap up our thought process and somewhat play our hand on how we're going to vote. And so, honestly, I'm not quite sure yet. We've heard some compelling delegations tonight from our community, from our professional staff. We've received information. We have had so much paper and documentation and time. We've had loads of questions behind the scenes and out in public. I do sympathize with the community that we've had access with a significant volume of additional information that the community has not had access to. But we've needed to have access to that information for all the right reasons to make our decision. Notwithstanding the comments of Mr. Sardana about rates and dividends and some of the priorities for being in favor of the merger, rates and dividends were never high on my list. Absolutely, I'm looking out for the ratepayer, and that is a factor in everything that we're weighing here tonight. But for me, it's been about 3 other priorities, and that all of my questions have been around that. All of my processing has been around those 3 priorities, among other things. And those are, and it's been articulated in tonight, the privatization, the people, and the progressive culture, the 3 Ps. We've heard about the fear of privatization. I no longer have that fear. I did have that fear. That's been allayed. I've heard from our other member municipalities and Mayor Lehman and Councillor Ward, thank you for being here and sticking it out with us till midnight, because I needed to know before I cast my vote that there was no risk there, because public utilities should always be in public hands. I feel strongly about that, and I would never move forward in any decision where I thought that was at risk. People, I'm hearing that people is Mr. Bentz's #1 priority, and I share that. I think we have amazing people. I had a customer service experience just this afternoon with Guelph Hydro, and I think the people who deliver our services locally, it's important that they are still the ones who deliver it locally, and that we invest in those people during the transition, whatever the outcome of the vote. And then the progressive culture. Mr. Bentz wrapped up and answered all those questions brilliantly. The compelling vision of Electra is certainly something that I needed to hear articulated by the CEO, and we did have that tonight. But I'm also hearing the emotion of our community. This is a very emotional decision. We're all really proud of our utility and the work that they've done over the last century and a bit. And the emotion I feel tied to that history as well. So this is going to be a really difficult decision. I'm not going to say in my comments one way or the other which way I'm voting. I'd like to hear from my other colleagues, and I know we're all going to have a chance to have our 1.5 minutes of time to wrap up before we press our buttons. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the time.
Thank you for being so coy. I have Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I don't mind saying I've made my decision. I made my decision several months ago when we voted to go forward to investigate a merger with Electra, although I am pleased with their presentations. They have reduced my fear of privatization through a merger significantly. That is not my big concern. But I think we're forgetting a few months ago when we voted to go forward with a merger, our concerns were local control. And it seems to be obvious to me that merging with Electra, we would essentially lose all of our local control. And it's manifested with the loss of 30 or 60 jobs. And I very rarely believe that bigger is better. I think that our utility may be on the small size of optimum, but it runs fine. And I would much prefer to merge with someone of equal size, and that was my hope. I think smaller companies, smaller entities innovate a lot better than larger ones do. And I think in the words of Mr. Bentz, he said, "We are big enough. Electra is big enough." So we're not helping them by making them bigger. And I'm not sure that they're helping us by causing us to lose control. So if the merger vote fails, I think that we should continue to pursue merger opportunities with other LDCs in the future. I don't think that the power system boogeyman is going to descend on us if we don't merge. Within a few years, another opportunity will present itself, and I would hope that they would be more of our size.
And over to Councillor Wetstein for comments.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is an incredible night, and I really appreciate the breadth of feedback that we've received from all the delegations. I think it was amazing. Particularly happy about the staff that spoke and their concerns, but I'm also really pleased that this is a partnership, and our partners came and spoke to us. The half dozen that drove here, whether they had their gas paid for or not, is not an issue for me. But I'm really glad they came, because hopefully, if it was the other way around, we'd go there and we would express our concerns and try to give comfort as well. My decision's actually, at this point in time, a pretty easy one. It's probably the easiest decision I've made in my 40 years of management in my career. 12 years ago, this City Council ratified a merger strategy from GESI to begin merger discussions. And we gave them the right to go out and start talking. Now that started the Horizon merger. That didn't work. But that's when we first started talking about mergers. This was a much better process, much more comprehensive, much more thorough. And quite frankly, we did it more professionally because we had the good help of all the people that were here. Last time, our management team was more professional, but as one of the councillors, I can say we as a council weren't as professional as we could have been. So I'll take the criticism for that. Secondly, doing nothing is a risk that I, as one councillor, am not prepared to take. I think it's a risk that is inevitable, and I think Mr. Puccini, when he talked about sale, probably understood that this isn't a question of merge or do nothing or even merge somewhere else. Our next step probably pushes us into a sale category, and then we don't have any autonomy, and then we don't have any control. We might get $150 million, like some other cities have done, whether it be Brampton or somebody else. So I just think that's a risk that at this stage of the information we've received tonight, it would be incredible for us as a council to take that kind of a risk. So I'm 100% in favor of this, and I want to thank everybody for their hard work and their presentation.
Thank you. Over to Councillor Hoffman.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Guthrie. I'm going to try and get through my notes here and read my messy writing. So we heard tonight loud and clear that there's no doubt that our local utility is a source of much pride in our community. I want to be really clear about that. We heard we have a local run, well-run utility that excels in customer service and reliability and is a really valuable asset. Having said that, I don't believe that our local utility has the influence, the resources, or the capital commitment to navigate through the transition that utilities are going to go through, not just in Guelph, but across the province. In my governance role, I need to discern what's best for our community, what's best for Gessie, and what's best for the shareholder. It's my role to ensure we have made the best deal and that we will get value from our asset. When we first started down this road to pursue mergers, councillors were able to put forward what we called our, I think it was non-negotiables or our conditions. Some of my conditions were to keep our Southgate location, ownership interest, board present, dividend, same or higher, ability to move green energy and technology forward, and last but most important, that the employees of Guelph Hydro be treated fairly. I cannot stress enough how challenging and difficult this decision has been for me. It has been a steep learning curve and has really stretched my worldviews. Thanks to everyone that has challenged me with their questions and their thoughtful comments. I know that all of you around this horseshoe have worked really, really hard to inform yourselves and make a well-informed decision, and you have done that through a great commitment to due diligence. I'm so very proud of all of you. I believe there's been ample financial, legal, and operational diligence performed. Proven business evaluation tools have been used. And I have confidence in staff's ability to represent Guelph's interest. I'd like to thank our delegations and letter writers for being engaged in this very important issue. I will be supporting the staff recommendation to proceed with the merger. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hoffman. And right beside you, Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hoffman, for that. I'm envious of Councillor Wetstein, who says this is the easiest decision he's made. I'm in my third year of my first term. This is the hardest for me by far, I would say, and I'll tell you why. I think in my other life as a huge international rock star, when I'm planning a show, I like to start strong and finish strong. And I'm looking at our delegates list, and I don't know how they did it, but Electra started and they finished very strong. And in those same shows, it doesn't matter what happens in the middle. But it matters to me what happened in the middle tonight. And I'm very conscious of that community voice that we heard so strongly, so articulately, so passionately, and yes, emotionally. I think sometimes, in my career too, as an activist, it actually sometimes is interpreted as a negative thing if you're emotional and passionate about something and not dispassionate and businesslike. However, in this case tonight, everyone on both sides, and it's a problem that there are sides, spoke not only with that passion, but well considered. They'd done the analysis, they've done the research, which leads me to why I am stuck when my stickiness comes from the fact that looking at that list, the survey aside, there have been a lot of questions about that. Every email, every phone call, every social media contact that we heard, every delegate tonight that was not an industry insider, all said they didn't want the merger. It seems to be that for whatever reason, this message of merger is not resonating with the public. And they have echoed some very serious concerns that, for me, personally, I've had many of them addressed. The local control, wanting more information about the actual economic benefits, the jobs, the service. One thing I struggle with is this is a kind of a do-it-yourself town. And this decision, for one thing, a lot of the key players don't even live in Guelph. But it does, this do-it-yourselfness makes us more afraid, as was mentioned, about making such a huge change all at once. So I don't know what to do about this schism that has happened. I sense it in the room that you can tell. My prediction is that this decision we're about to make will not go the way the people in the gallery want it to go. So there's going to be a healing process that is necessary. I took inspiration from our politicians from Barrie who talked about having a similar experience, want to learn about that. But the fact that we don't have that buy-in makes me hesitant to go, how can I push a button without community buy-in at all? And I'm not seeing it. And I have to be 100% certain if and when I press the yes button. What I am certain of, though, is that this city of ours has a wonderful resiliency, has a creative and innovative spirit, has a desire to be unique, collaborative, and has the leadership skills to contribute in a meaningful way to addressing the challenges ahead if given a legitimate voice in this or any merger. So my hope is that we'll get to a place where it feels like that we have a legitimate voice. And to echo what Councillor Bell said, are we giving it all away, or is there a way that we can work together on it? I think that it may be largely symbolic at this point for me personally, but I'm concerned that you folks, everyone that's written in, all the calls I've got, those people will feel unheard. And I want to get to a place where they do feel heard. Mentioning the symbolism, the only thing I can do now is to show you that I've heard you through my vote. Thank you.
And Councillor Salisbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a unique opportunity actually through this process that was different from a lot of my council ward mates. Councillor Alt and I served on the Guelph Hydro board for about a year. About a year ago, we were removed from that board when we started to get into these merger discussions. Thought it was good to create that separation. But in the year previous to that, I had a really good insight into our local utility. And I want to, first of all, I want to say, not only did I learn a great deal about this on a technical basis, it was one of the best experiences I've had on this council. The board was run extremely well. My fellow board mates were incredibly knowledgeable, put out a lot of passion, a lot of forethought. It was a joy to work with that board. And so I want to say thank you to them, because many of them are in the audience. It was a great experience, and I learned a lot. It also gave me a lot of insight into this process, and to be honest, kind of made me feel a little more responsible than, you know, as someone who has had the benefit of that experience to go through this. Similar to the audience, my initial bias coming into this was pretty much the same. I wrote this down. Somebody said inherently suspicious. I thought, man, that sums it up absolutely right there. I questioned whether or not bigger was better. I questioned whether or not, you know, the question, if it ain't broke, why fix it? And so I entered this process questioning the assumptions, questioning the base assumptions. You tell me it's good for us. You tell me, you know, it's like dating the prom queen will make you happy. Okay, well, have we met anyone else who's dated the prom queen who ended up happy? Or have we known people who didn't date the prom queen and ended up unhappy? So it was really about asking the questions, prove to me that what you're saying on an assumption basis is correct. That was how I approached this whole process. Hours of detailed investigation and analysis. At one point, I came to realize I was getting absolutely no feedback on this. No phone calls, no emails. I was doing some door-to-door work. Nobody was talking about it. I hand-delivered 4,500 notices about this issue, directing people to the Energizing Tomorrow website and giving my email address. Started to get some feedback then. If there's anyone from the Ward 4 of the West End, you probably got one. There were about 500 houses I just didn't have time to get to. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, why didn't you get one? I'm sorry. There's a real challenge here. There's a real difficulty, and I was saying this during the break that, you know, we have delegates tonight, particularly, is a really good example. Even in the event that people were completely up to speed with 100% of the publicly available information, you didn't have the full picture. And philosophically, I have a problem with this. I questioned whether or not, you know, this idea of maintaining the privacy of these agreements. They say, well, you know, this is, you know, a private issue, and I couldn't help but think, but these are public organizations we're talking about. I'm not going to win that one. The information wasn't available. But it certainly, I understand how people come to this and they think this is unfathomable that we would consider this, because on the surface, everything's tickety-boo. It runs well, it's well managed, it's got, you know, good dividend. It doesn't appear that there's any rationale to pursue this. So I really understand that, but it's difficult to be in a position of having access to more information. It makes it difficult. Unlike Councillor Gordon, though, my feedback though has been mixed. I would say the majority of people coming at it from a passionate place have said, why would we do this? But I had an equal number of people that, or at least some people that came out in favor. I had a very strong opportunity to talk with an industry insider who asked me a host of technical questions I'd never even heard of. I directed him to our staff. He came back and said, Mike, I've been through it all and I feel pretty good about this. So that felt good. But I also had a lot of people that simply said, look, I don't know. There's a lot going on here that I'm not up to speed with, so I'm trusting that you're going to do your due diligence and make the decision on my behalf. That is very, you know, I say that, that's a burden, it's an honor, and I took it seriously. I did have one person, though, I want to say, who said something along the lines of, if you don't say no to this, you won't get my vote. And my answer to him was, if I'm making decisions based on whether I get reelected, I don't deserve to get reelected. So that's never been the concern. I'm more than happy to come out on the short end of this stick or be unpopular or find I have a new job next year. I've approached this, that this is too important as all the decisions we make. This is a community first decision. This isn't about me. As staff knows, when the report, a lot of people spoke about the tome that was released on Monday, I don't know, 400 pages, 500 pages. It was huge, plus the confidential stuff that I got. I spent about 14 hours over the weekend, and I came up with 27 written questions based on that, and 14 questions based on the confidential material, of which 2 were absolute deal breakers. All of those questions have been answered. Certainly the deal breaker questions were answered to my satisfaction, and the overwhelming majority of the other questions, particularly the important ones, were answered to my satisfaction. The problem as I see it, we have an industry that's changing, and they're trying their best to read the crystal ball and figure out which way is the right way to do it. As I've been sort of jokingly telling people, I said, we have a 50% chance of getting this right. And I hope that regardless of the decision we make, that's the case. I have a lot of confidence in the people here, but we're really looking at a future that we can't predict. The real game changer for me recently with regards to this, this year, I finally took the phone that had really effectively, I hadn't used for several years, off the wall. I pushed the wire in the wall and I mudded over the hole. I never saw that coming. I never imagined living in a house without a phone. And that's the kind of changes we're talking about here. I've heard a lot of people talk about this being a rush process. I don't personally feel that was the case for me. I feel it was, from my perspective as a city councillor, being guided through this by our staff, I thought it was a very comprehensive, well-presented, notwithstanding the fact of that big report coming in on Monday, which felt a bit like a crunch. Up to that point, this has been a great process for me in terms of methodical and well thought out. I'm absolutely of the mindset is that if you need the answer now, the answer's no, and I don't feel that way about this process. I want to speak to the process. We did go through 14. We did bring that down to a handful. I felt very comfortable about that point because that handful included nearby utilities, mid-range utilities, or mid-sized utilities and large utilities. And I felt that at that point when we're looking at that level, I felt like I had a lot to choose from. I didn't feel like I was just presented with this option. I really felt that I had been presented with a wide range to select from. I was equally surprised that it turned out to be the larger one, and in my personal opinion, I felt it was hands and feet above all the others. When it comes down to making my decision on this, with regards to rates and dividend and emergency response times, I'm fairly comfortable that neither the standalone nor the merged option presents significant benefit either way. So it's a bit of a wash, but I feel comfortable that it is a bit of a wash. The issue, as far as I'm concerned, comes down to access to capital and to meet the challenges and opportunities that are ahead for us. I believe that this merger gives us that opportunity that we would not have alone or would not have with a smaller utility to merge with. The other issue, I just want to finish on this, thank you, was municipal ownership, privatization. This was a huge concern for me. I feel very strongly about this. And without getting into great detail, I felt comfortable that in all of the ways that I thought that could happen, the solution always came back to either a unanimous vote or a supermajority vote, which is 2/3. And I felt pretty comfortable with that. I will finish on this. It occurred to me that under the status quo situation, we are 7 votes away from a privatization of this utility. Gessie could be privatized by this council with a 7-6 vote. Under this scenario, should it be successful, that's a lot more number of seats actually that need to feel the same way for that to actually happen. And as I say, supermajority or a unanimous vote made me comfortable in that. I feel fairly comfortable supporting the merger.
Thank you, Councillor Salisbury. Over to this side, Councillor Downer.
Thank you. I sort of started out the same way as Councillor Salisbury, but I don't think I won't give the whole story, but the similar types of questions, like, and I said, it was one of the meetings we had where we talked about this, that I really needed the information about why Guelph Hydro couldn't make it as a standalone, and I kept insisting that that was the information that I needed. But I also did some self-education. I went to a number of forums on how the energy sector is changing in Ontario through AMO, and at every conference I went to, I'd pick those sessions to go to. And so I sort of got a real sense of what was changing, and as Pankaj says tonight, like Guelph Hydro itself is, as a standalone, does not have the capacity in many ways to move forward as a standalone. So I sort of have come to that acceptance of that. The next part, I heard something different tonight than Councillor Gordon. I heard many people, I agree that they said they don't want merger. I heard so many people say that we would be, accepting a merger. I have nothing against merger, but maybe not this one, because I don't have enough information, or you didn't look at this, or you didn't look at that. And I understand that speaks to the information that we cannot share publicly, because these are corporations, and we can't share that public information with you, which I agree is unfortunate. But those were the reasons that were given for people saying, I don't want a merger because I don't have that information, or you may not have done the due diligence. But I have the confidence of the people that we have hired for this, that due diligence was done with 14 utilities that were all publicly owned. The other part of this, and so as you can tell, I'm supporting this. I'm a little jazzed about 6 municipalities banding together to form like the company like Electra, and I think the culture we heard through the people speaking tonight from there speaks to the fact that they're municipally owned, and that's the way we sort of operate ourselves. The kind of culture, the municipal culture, you can see going into that partnership, and it just feels like, good for us. Good for us for taking, what's happening in this sector and driving it ourselves and being leaders in it as a collective. And so I must say I'm happy about that. I'm happy that municipalities are doing that way. This is not a private corporation. It's going to be extremely difficult if anybody ever wanted to do that. These are 6 other municipalities like us. We know, and we meet some of these councillors at different events. They view this through the similar lens that we do, and I think that's very positive for our community. Like I said, once I got to the point of accepting that standalone was very difficult to us, what are our options then, and who would our dance partners be? And I'm satisfied with the information that we have received around this. And like I said, what I heard tonight was people who were saying maybe merger, but not, we don't have enough information. But I've been satisfied around that part of the information. But I would like to thank everybody coming tonight and getting themselves educated on this issue and being engaged in this process.
Thank you, and Councillor Gibson is my last.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. So I'll start by, I'll be quick, but I will start by saying I started this journey a year ago, where I think a lot of people around this horseshoe started, and I think where a lot of the people in the audience are, and I appreciated the comments tonight, because I found myself exactly where you were. I proudly supported I proudly voted against any kind of sale of Guelph Hydro. I believe that there's a bright future for this new energy use. I believe many of us are going to be driving electric cars. I think households are going to be using more electricity in the future. So I never thought that simply removing ourselves from this market was a good plan. Very reluctantly supported investigating a merger. But as I've immersed myself more and more, I've come to the conclusion, and I think that if I'm being completely intellectually honest with myself, I think a do nothing, and Councillor Wetstein talked about this, a do nothing at this point, I would almost say that it puts our local work center and it puts our future of a local presence at more risk than what we're looking at doing tonight, because we can secure a 10-year future where we have local presence, local workers, and I'm fearful of what the do nothing mode holds in the short-term future. But I wanted to read something that I got permission from one of our CEI committee members, because I think community is still very important to this part. But he wrote something to all of council, and I asked permission. He gave me permission to read it tonight. And it's around getting to 2.0 and what he believes is the limitation for a lot of local distributing companies. So he wrote, as part of the CEI update, we have been looking a great deal at our citywide vehicle emissions and contrasting that with electrical vehicle technologies as a cleaner transportation alternative. Many of us are really excited about the oncoming of the EV transition. I believe that to achieve a 60% reduction in CO2 emission levels, a significant move towards electrification of transportation is required. A number of articles discuss the last mile, which is described as which describes the local distributing companies, their role in connecting from grid to vehicle. This final step has often been a significant obstacle in mass market adoption of technology, and many small LDCs will lack the resources needed to upgrade support infrastructure to meet the demands of electricity-intensive innovation. This poses a significant threat to achieving our emissions reductions goals for the city. That was from one of our CEI task force members, and I wholeheartedly believe him on that. We don't want to sell. We want to stay a part of this. The do nothing is not really an option. So the merger, and we've talked about process tonight, 14 different touch points with different municipalities. We've reached out, we've done our due diligence, we've cycled that down to the absolute best proposal that came forward, and I believe people were excited to compete for a merger with ourselves. But I wanted to remind, well, I'll end with this. I heard it in a few delegations tonight, and I had written it down, and I believe it, that this is the exact opposite of privatization. This is about large municipalities, 6, maybe 7 after tonight, joining forces to meet the challenges of the future through public ownership, not through private ownership. Stronger together is often used as a catchphrase in campaigns. We've heard that, but in this case, I believe it is absolutely true. We can be stronger together through public ownership, and I will be supporting the merger.
Okay, and Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, and through Mr. Mayor. There's no doubt that Guelph Hydro is exceptionally well run. It is a fantastic utility, and it's going to be absolutely great this year. It's going to be great next year. It's going to be the year after that. But we're not looking at the short term. We're looking 10, 20 years down the road. That's what we have to do. So I would agree. There's no problem with Guelph Hydro right now. But in 20 years, there's a huge problem, both with evaluation, through the transformative changes that's coming along. And we have to make some sort of changes. And this is a great deal for Guelph. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that. The business plan is incredibly clear. As a councillor, I am fully informed. I feel like there's no information that I did not have access to. I feel like I'm fully informed. I believe that I had more than enough time to review all the documentation that was sent to me. And I believe that the people talk about, well, why now? Well, why now is because we didn't do it a few years ago. If we got on the ground floor with Electra, maybe that would have been a better position, as we've seen with St. Catharines scenario. Barring going back in time, today is the best time to do this. We're going to maximize the value of our assets. Going forward, we're going to be transforming what we do so that we're going to be future-proof and resilient for the 10 to 15, 20 years in the future. But I will just say one thing, that if there was any doubts by any councillors that this was not 100% the best thing to do, I think that the delegations by Councillor Ward and Mayor Lehman from Barrie was a home run. They've been through this. That gets rid of the what-if scenarios, but-if scenarios. It's very clear. There's history. It's been shown. It works. There's no doubt that this is a great idea, and I'm very happy to support it.
Thank you. And Councillor Alt?
Thank you, Mayor Guthrie. I've got to admit that in these past few weeks, I feel as if I've been studying for a life-changing one-shot exam. I've researched, I've organized my thoughts, reconsidered my assumptions, and my hardwired ideas. Clearly, this decision is the most important that we on Council are going to make. I do wish to thank Jane Armstrong and the Hydro Board, our consultants, and the Strategic Options Committee for your leadership on this front. I've also appreciated stepping off the Hydro Board to avoid any conflict of interest caused by being required by law to do what is right by Guelph Hydro, but which might not be entirely in the best interest of the corporation of the City of Guelph or of its residents. The issue that we're facing right now is this the right merger for Guelph at this time? And as we embark on this, I think of the city's motto, faith, fidelity, and progress. As a councillor, I must be faithful to the residents of Guelph. We must all do what we believe to be the best. And there's the rub. Is what is best for Guelph Hydro best for Guelph? I'm not so certain, and consequently I will vote against the merger. I have a number of concerns, and I'll try to be brief. First and foremost, we were presented with the notion that Guelph will be the center of a southwest hub of Electra. And by definition, that implies that Electra is in the process of constant expansion. Waterloo, Kitchener, perhaps Cambridge, large centres. Perhaps Electra is primarily concerned with large centres, large urban populations, where urban density is such that costs are reduced and earnings are maximized. But what bugged me about this was, what if the strategy is stonewalled, perhaps by KW or Cambridge, merging to avoid becoming an element in a larger corporation? In my mind, the Southwest Hub becomes somewhat moot. Guelph could be serviced by a minimal staff largely administered from elsewhere. If Penetanguishene can be serviced from Barrie, Guelph could be serviced from Hamilton, and possibly from a call centre miles away. Guelph residents have time and again stated they appreciate the timely responses they receive from a call centre dedicated to 55,000 customers that call centre located in Guelph. I cannot assure that those same customers will feel that the same service is available in a call centre that is servicing 1 million. And of course, there are employment concerns for those working in Guelph. We already admit that the Guelph workforce will be reduced and rationalized by retirements, resignations, and assignments elsewhere. Retirements and resignations are going to occur naturally. Reassignment in a merged corporation, however, is not certain to be good for Guelph, nor for those employees affected. Those are employees that are value added for the community. They're part of an economic multiplier. As for the Green Centre, from tonight I am more confident, but still not entirely comfortable with the Green Hub. Admittedly, $5 million is more than zero. But I want to put it another way. A multi-billion-dollar corporation and a multi-million-dollar merger is perhaps only willing to commit $5 million to a Green Hub to service nearly 1 million customers. That is, in another way, $5 per customer, or a fraction of what is paid by each member on their annual hydro bill. I also have to consider our political assumptions. I'll be very brief about that, but we are going to have an election in 6 months. The status quo regarding the principles around mergers are not assured. We already know that mergers are a manifestation of the MacDonald Report from over 20 years ago, modified by the 1990s zeal for privatization, never tempered by governments of any political stripe. Yet at the same time, no government has ever forced a merger. In politically volatile times such as we face now, will they do it now? I don't know. On another note, but in terms of process, I feel I must also comment on the local media and the lack of daily newspapers. While our staff worked hard to inform our residents of the tremendous importance of this merger, they have been at a disadvantage caused by the demise of the Daily Mercury, and that is no disrespect to those who are staying here so late from Guelph Today from the Guelph Tribune. This merger is the first evidence we have of the absence of a local daily print newspaper and how it has affected the public in being informed. Our reporters from the Tribune, from Guelph Today, and Guelph Political have done the job that they can do, mindful of the constraints their newspapers or their media face. They have never had the resources to delve deeply into this story the way that perhaps the Mercury or the Kitchener Record or even the Toronto Star might have been able to do in certain circumstances. They've done well to report what they have. They were never able to analyze and present the merger effectively, primarily because they're working on a myriad of assignments. I saw Tony at the hockey game the other night, and now he's here. He's constantly working on something different. Investigative journalism in Guelph is sorely lacking, and our residents pay for that lack of analysis. So to merge or to not merge is not an easy decision. We can either be wrong or right, as many of my colleagues have stated. We will not, however, know that for at least 10 years, and there is no turning back, and consequently, I prefer to err on the side of caution. Thank you to the staff for your diligence. Your hard work on behalf of Hydro and the Corporation of Guelph is extremely commendable. Yet I must answer the question differently than has been recommended. For that reason, I will not support the merger at this time.
Is there any other comments at all before I call the vote? From anybody? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor
I
Burns.
apologize. I don't have a book.
Don't apologize.
Though. I've got no scripts, no books, or anything like that. This issue has been so difficult. Definitely. I mean, I've been on council for 13 years, and this has been my hardest issue, bar none. In the last week and a half, I've been physically ill, shaking. I couldn't decide which way. So I read everything. As you know, I asked how many questions, Mr. Mayor. It was unbelievable. I don't mean tonight. I mean before this. It was just so difficult for me. One constituent wrote, once Guelph Hydro is gone, it's gone forever. Breaks my heart because it's just something, I don't know, it's the emotional side that really got to me this time, because when I told you I did the analysis, you should vote to merge. To me, if you really go through and you think, is it a good deal for Guelph? Is it a good deal for the ratepayers? And I think that's what we should be looking at. Is it a good deal for the ratepayers? I'm going to have to say yes. We should vote to merge. Because I picked it apart every which way, and I couldn't come up with, and I had a lot of help to pick it with, and I don't know, it was so frustrating because I wanted to see a fault, and I couldn't find a fault. But I tell you what really upsets me is, okay, so I've been down this road before, so has Councillor Bell, so has Councillor Salisbury, so has Councillor Piper and Wetstein, with respect to, hey, let's have a merger. Oh, and June? And June. And so it's not like we don't know this process. We don't know what it's like. It's not like we don't know. We're going to get phone calls and emails. And we didn't know, and we know it's an emotional issue. So on June 13th, there was a vote. So the first one was, okay, we're going to sell or not. But anyways, on June 13th, there was the vote. We already kind of knew, behind the scenes what was going on. And the vote was, are we going to continue to do due diligence and the business case for X? And that was the vote, because that's when you start spending the money. That's when you really start spending the money. And the reality is I was always so attached to the idea of keeping a Guelph Hydro as standalone, or some people think I'm a dreamer. I always wanted to merge with Cambridge and Kitchener. Always did. Wanted to have that regional hub. And so knowing what I felt and I knew, and because I'd been through the process before, I didn't vote. I didn't vote to spend all this money to go down the rabbit hole, and it's been a lot of money. And usually I ask the question, don't I? But how much have we spent so far? And I didn't even ask that tonight because I already know it's too much. It's like crazy wicked money, right? And so the point was, I voted against it because I didn't want to waste the money, because I knew how I'd feel, and nor did Councillor Bell. He didn't support it either. And nor, actually, Councillor Van Helleman, you didn't support it either. But anyways, the rest of you did. The rest of you did, because I looked up the minutes. And the reality is the rest of you did. You did know, and you know the process. So, well, some of you do, because you went down it before. So here we get the report back, huge report, took days to go through it, and it's a good report. It really is. And I really do want to fault it. But so the last week and a half is the emotional strings versus good report. So the professionals can't help me out with the emotions. So at the end of the day, which I wish they could, so at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you emotionally, I do not want to lose Guelph Hydro. I do not want to merge. I don't want to. But mentally, I have to do, unfortunately, what's best for the ratepayer, and so therefore I have to support to merge. And so that it has not been a fun week.
No, understandable. Okay, so I would like to call the vote, but guess what I get to do? I'm allowed, right? I hear sighs, and I haven't said anything all night. So thank you. I think it's the third time I've said thank you to the people that have come here tonight in the audience, and for those that weren't here tonight that have sent correspondence over and over again, whether it's through email or telephone or in person or social media. I do thank you. You did challenge me on some things where I then needed to get clarity on. And so I want you to know that it wasn't outright dismissed. I took many of the concerns that were given to me, followed up to get clarity so that I was understanding if I was, correct on my assumptions or not. The process issue has been talked about already. The fact that we've been here for over 14 months dealing with this, with several open council motions and many opportunities for delegations in a formal process here in council chambers or in other pop-up and other type of opportunities across the city. That checks the box for me. Look at all the other benefits that have been talked about. I'm not going to go through them. Everyone has been told that. I am fearful that if we were not to merge here in this opportunity, that and this is a crystal ball statement.
And
it passes. So thank you again to everyone that's been a part of this. I do appreciate it. So this I'm almost speaking on behalf of council.
barely got back online.
Hey! I just want to do the bylaws, and then I want to bring it over to our CAO for some closing comments before we go to adjournment. So bylaws,
Moving it and seconded by Councillor Wetstein. That bylaw is number 2017-20236 to 2017-20237. Be passed inclusively. That's it.
well, thank you very much. Is there any questions on those then, anybody? Seeing none, I'm calling the vote, everybody. The vote is active. Now, I think after a 14-month process, we should have another couple minutes of focus and listening to what our CAO needs to say in regards to staff before we move on, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Council. First of all, I certainly like to thank all the members of the SLC for all their hard work and dedication. I'd also like to thank the Hydro Board for also their hard work and dedication. And quite frankly, the team, Punkage, Ron, Troy. But there's one person that we haven't mentioned tonight that it was indicative to a lot of hard work, and that's Barb Swartzentrooper. And I just wanted to acknowledge her publicly on the hard work for the working teams and pulling this all this information together. So on behalf of Council Barb, thank you very much for all your efforts.
On behalf of Council, I would like to extend the same gratitude to all of our staff for helping us. I cannot compare this to the previous process, so I'm only relying on the ones that were there. But what I've been told, this process has been excellent, transparent, engaging. Communications has been excellent. So to all the staff that were a part of all of that, consultants, our independent advisors, thank you very much. And I guess now I can also, well, no matter what the outcome, I would have thanked you anyways. To those that are here from Electra or from other places in regards to this opportunity, we now look forward to working with you and making our utility here really responsive to our city and doing great things. So thank you very much. With that, an adjournment from Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Hofflin. All in favor, let me see those hands. Have a good night, everybody.